I think you should hear this.
Welcome to I Think You Should Hear This, a podcast about people's journeys of adversity, self-discovery, and growth. For this episode, I have with me Brendan Van Winchen and his lovely doggos,
Xena and Zuna.
Xena and Luna.
Yes.
Yeah. So Brendan is a lead guitarist of a metal band. Also, what does production, writing, anything else?
Yep. Sing, guitar, climb trees for a living, do spiritual work and healings and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, bit of everything.
Bit of everything. So we met at Esoteric through mutual friends Sarah and Dylan.
Yep.
Connected there. And I think Esoteric's a great place to start because you mentioned how pivotal it was for you learning about, I guess, your spiritual path has led you to where you are now.
Yeah.
And the after events of ESO have led you to the healing space. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I guess if we're going to get into my healing journey, really it would probably start back when I was about 19, so I was never really like spiritual or anything like that. But well, I guess we should probably actually just go back to the beginning, I guess.
Yeah,
so like
let's do that.
Because I'm just going to keep trying to like go back to different parts. But
yeah.
So growing up, essentially, I was very unhealthy. So up until when I was 25 years old, so I'm 6'2". When I was 25 years old, I was 53 kilos. So like borderline anorexic pretty much. And this was because growing up, straight out of the womb pretty much had allergies to everything. So any animal, cats, dogs, horses, anything like that, had anaphylaxis to peanuts and allergies to all other nuts. And used to have like severe asthma to the point where middle of the night I wouldn't be able to breathe, and we had this massive briefcase thing that opened up and we get all these like chemicals and put them in it, and I have to wear this oxygen mask on for 20 minutes and it's like makes all this noise to things like steroids to calm your lungs down and stuff. So that's enough. So just a lot of allergies, heaps of issues. And when I was 9 years old, because my mum was very conscious about my health and very careful,
Protective.
very protective about it. So when I was 9 years old, she started working at a naturopath, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to get you tested," and went to this testing thing, and they put like 20 needles in my arms and tried all different things, and like 90% of like my whole arm was just this one red welt, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I remember she's like, "Oh yeah," like there was another woman who worked there, and her son was like the same age as me, and he's like this nerdy kid, and he had this, I'd never met him, he had this like big grin on his face when I rocked up, and he's like, "Is he going on the diet?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's going on the diet." I'm like, "Fucking diet, like I'm already like skinny as it is, like what am I meant to, like what do you mean by diet?" And they're like, "Oh yep, so you're allergic to this and this, so this means that no more preservatives, artificial colors, artificial flavors, MSG, sugar, wheat, or dairy."
Dude, is this called the GAPS diet?
I have no idea, but
I'm reading a book and it's like all autoimmune.
Yeah, it was
some
chaos,
autism,
man.
dyslexia, like any mental disorders, dissociative disorders, all this shit is like because of all of that. Literally the book, I borrowed it, it's just arrived. I'll fucking pass it on to you because it sounds like that. But yeah, sorry.
It's wild,
continue.
man. But yeah, so I was like, oh, okay. And then, when I'm at school, all of a sudden, I remember my lunchbox would consist of a plain packet of crinkle cut chips, a apple and blackcurrant just juice, these two like gluten-free cookies before gluten-free was a thing, so it was just like eating dust.
Yeah, yuck.
And then I think I was allowed to have like a little bit of cheese, but it was like cheese and like an off-brand of Vegemite on like rye bread, and it was just like the most disgusting thing. And Nutlex, if you know what that is, it's like the
Yeah, like
butter spread.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like fake butter, which is, cancer in a
Yeah,
container
yeah,
pretty
that shit's
much.
no good. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that's what I ate for all my lunches throughout all of high school, all of primary school, and everything.
Yeah, you're not gonna put on weight eating that.
Yeah, well, I didn't enjoy eating either.
No.
So it was, yeah, one of those things where I was just like this skinny kid. And, because of that, I wouldn't really partake in many combat sports or anything like that as well. So I was just very unflexible, didn't have like strong bones or anything like that because I was just completely malnourished for ages.
Mm.
And, yeah, it wasn't until I was 25 till I was like, man, I need to kind of do something about this. Like this is not good because I'm around all my friends. I remember I had this mate. I remember the first day I met him, we shook hands and my hand cracked, like the noise went. And I was like, "Was that you?" He was like, "No, I think that was your hand, man." I was like, "Fuck, am I that like brittle?"
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
just can't even shake another dude's hand without like being completely flexed on by
yeah.
just them having a normal hand. But yeah, so I think my spiritual journey kind of started when I was about, I wouldn't say spiritual journey. I don't know if I was aware of it, but when I was 19 years old, I remember I don't even really know what happened. I think I was in between a breakup or something like that, or I was in a relationship. But I remember I was just sitting on my bed and I had this like out of body experience, which I just felt, I don't know, like my consciousness kind of went and something communicated with me and was like, I don't even know like what the words, how to describe it into words, but it was basically um, like you're a good person, you have a lot of good that you're going to do in your life, and people are better with you in their lives than without. And it lasted for 30 seconds, but there was a lot that went on there. And after that, I just kind of never really dealt with depression or anything like that. Like
Were you
it just,
depressed going into that?
not really. Not like consciously like, oh, I'm depressed. I think that, at that time in my life, I was, in a lot of unhealthy environments, and I was just playing video games and masturbating and just, all just the
Yeah,
typical just teenage fucking loser shit.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I wasn't
Well,
like,
you're an adult loser if you're still doing
yeah, yeah.
it.
But
Yeah,
I wasn't like, oh, I'm depressed. I think I was just bored.
yeah,
And but
yeah. It's
after
cheap too.
yeah, but after that, I just had this like, I guess it gave me like a bit of a chip on my shoulder, like this just ego of like, oh, I'm kind of had this I'm better than everyone else attitude without having any like validity to being that. But it really did help me in terms of like navigating friendships and everything, where I did have the idea of like, okay, well, if we're not friends anymore, like I'm actually better off like in this kind of sense because I
Mm.
know that I'm this wonderful person. And it was very strange. Like I was definitely not a healthy person to be around at that time.
Mm.
Um, I kind of like, because I had like a 4chan background growing up. So I kind of like, at a young age, became like an internet racist, like right wing, like full blown kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, I just make like these jokes and these remarks and just had this fucking ridiculous sense of humor. But in my head, the way that I logically put it was like, oh no, you have to like get past the shit version of myself to actually understand who I really am,
Mm.
kind of thing. And it was like just a very unhealthy way to go about things. It's like, okay, I'm just going to be a prick to you, but if you can endure it, I'll actually be nice to you in the end,
Yeah,
kind of
like you
thing.
need to be worthy.
Yeah, um, but yeah, so I didn't really properly start my spiritual journey till maybe like 21-ish, but that was definitely like the first kind of stone that got tossed without me realizing it. But so we had a quick discussion earlier, but we started talking about like the Seth material, which is something I've been studying for 10 years. And for anyone who doesn't know what the Seth material is, there was a psychic medium woman named Jane Roberts who lived back in the 60s and the 70s. And she was a poet as well. And basically, one day she was writing some poetry on her desk. And meanwhile, doing the poetry, she felt her consciousness kind of leave her body and out the window and into the leaves and into the trees and all these kinds of things. And when she came back to her body, there were writings that were hers but weren't written by her on the sheet of paper, basically saying that there was a spirit that she knew named Seth from past lives, and he would like to communicate through her in order to essentially help aid in the expansion of consciousness for humanity and everything. I'm 99% sure that's the initial way that it all went down. So, over the following years, she learned how to channel this personality called Seth, and with the help of her husband, Robert, she would enter a trance state and Seth would speak through her, and her husband would write down everything he says, and through that they released about roughly 30 books of dictated material. And so when I was 21 years old, my father was like reading these books, and he's like, oh, you should he's been reading all these books, and he goes, oh, there's just answers to everything I ever wanted to know is in this. And at that time I was working with him, and he was like, oh, just kind of telling me little things and just slowly like opening my awareness to certain things. Yeah, just slowly like opening my awareness and kind of like telling me things about, say, like the dream state or manifestation and these concepts that I'd never even heard of before. But funnily enough, the first time that Jane was able to channel Seth, which was through a Ouija board, was on the 2nd of December 1963, which is the day that my dad was born. So it was very like, oh, this is like very, there's like a level of synchronicity to it. So he gave me my first Seth book, which is The Eternal Validity of the Soul, which is the one that I recommend everyone to begin with. And yeah, from the age of 21, I started reading that, but it's like learning a completely new language when you're reading it. At least 10 times a page, I had to Google what the words meant and, go back over them and like, what the hell does he mean by that? And just all these kinds of things. So I started, reading these Seth books from about the age of like 2021. But it's very difficult. At that time, I could read maybe like 3 or 4 pages and I'd have to stop because it was just such an overload. So it took me like years to get through the first book. But that's what kind of started me with it. And yeah, it helped me navigate through a lot of things, just kind of understanding, because it hits a lot of different topics. Like it talks about your like your ego, your conscious self, your subconscious self, your higher self, your psyche, your entity, your reincarnational cycle. Like it goes fully in depth with everything, and there's a lot to learn from it. And yeah, it probably wasn't until I was, I guess, like 24, 25, where I was around a certain group, and this kind of led to my next kind of initiation of things, which is when, psychedelics got brought into my life. And, I had a friend who was, well, I guess I haven't spoken about this to anyone for a while, but I had this, a good friend named Nick. Still have a good friend named Nick. He's still around. I haven't seen him in a long time.
Yeah.
But he used to play in my band as well. And he, I won't get too deep into things, but he went down like a very, very dark path for a long time, and became very depressed, was very suicidal, dealing with a lot of things. And he started taking LSD. And at that point in time, I was the same toward anyone who's kind of like new to psychedelic drugs and stuff. Because, we've all heard the story of, the guy who turned into a glass of orange juice and, like all those kinds of things. And you're like, man, like, mind altering drugs are pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
And, and I was talking to him about it. And I'm like, okay, like, can you kind of explain to me what your fascination with this is?
Mm.
And the way he kind of described it was, he's like, dude, I hate life. Like, I've had enough of it. Like, it is not being kind to me. I think he went through a lot of physical abuse growing up as well. And he said, when I take this drug, it takes me to another place where I enjoy where I am, and it's given me a new meaning to enjoy life, pretty much. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not too keen on it, but as long as you're actually like doing okay and it's helping you, like I'm for this.
Mm.
And yeah, as I kind of, it's one of those things, man, like you attract things, you know what I mean? Like when you're ready for certain things in your life, they will come to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it eventually got to the point where I was in a relationship and all of my partner's friends at the time, they were all very into like psychedelic culture. And that's when, they were like, oh, have you ever been doofing? And I was like, oh, no. So they took me to my first doof where I didn't really take any drugs or anything because I was like, okay, I'm just kind of wrapping my head around what the hell's going on. Like there's lots of people dressed really funny and, there's loud music and I was just like, I don't know what to think of this. And I'm there just like, I remember I was in my Converse's black skinny jeans with like a black metal hoodie on, just like full black, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
"What are you wearing?" I was like, "I don't know. These are the only clothes I own, man."
Yeah.
Like no, you need to wear like fluffy
Weird
stuff. And I
shit.
was like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but it was cool, like understanding that culture and everything. And it wasn't until the following year where as I was saying earlier, I'm kind of like a all or nothing kind of guy.
Yeah.
And at this point, I was quite excited to try psychedelics. And I'd been reading all like my Seth material and kind of understanding the subconscious nature of reality and all these kinds of things. And it was like the way I like to explain it is like I did the theory on the spiritual side
Yeah.
of things before kind of exploring, yeah, psychedelics. And yeah, so we went to a doof that was called New Dawn, and I think that was 2018 to 19, I believe. And yeah, we got there, and leading up to it, everyone was like, oh, maybe you should just take like just half a tab and we'll be at home and take it chill. I was like, nah, dude, like I want to be in the bush, be fully in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, we rocked up and we all set up and it was like really exciting. And I remember we're all sitting around our table just kind of enjoying ourselves, and these random dudes come up and they're like, hey guys, like we're your neighbors. Look, you take care of us, we'll take care of you. And they just threw this massive bag of mushrooms down on our table and just fucked off. And we're like, oh cool, like more more psychedelics to like I guess indulge in kind of thing.
Mm.
And yeah, I was like, I'm gonna send it. So like I remember they said like two of those mushrooms would do you good, and I was like, I'm gonna just eat like 12 with a banana. So like I ate all these mushrooms with a banana, and then I don't know if I just like forgot that it happened because they didn't kick in for ages or whatever happened, but I remember sitting there and being like, what is going on? Like all of a sudden I could see the air, and
Yeah.
I was like, what are they doing to the air? Like what's happening? And
Why
I
is
was
it thick?
I was like wigging out. I was like, what the hell? And then I was looking at the trees and like in my peripheral vision I could see like letters in the trees saying like Happy New Year and like all this stuff. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And then like, all right, I was like, all right, I guess we'll take acid. So I took like 2 tabs of acid.
On
It
the
was
same
like,
night.
yeah, yeah,
Sick.
yeah. And man, this is a fun story to tell actually. I experienced some really good stuff on it. And yeah, I remember we're sitting there and it starts like kicking in big time. And I was like, holy shit. And my mate was like, bro, just a heads up, like it's gonna come in waves. So just ride the wave and you'll be sweet. And I was like, all right, we're on the wave. And then I remember my mate Danny was like talking to him and he's like, Brendan, before you go, I just need to like tell you, like, he starts talking to me and he's got like a bit of a big head and this beanie and he turned into like a bobblehead as he's talking to me. I was like, I can't deal with this, man.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I gotta get to the dance floor, dude. So yeah, I went down to the dance floor and I was just like, I've never heard music like this before, like in this state.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like dancing away. And I had another one of my friends there at the time. And I remember we were just like, this is the best. Like, this is so cool. And we're just like having this mad yarn and we're like talking about all this stuff. And then he's like talking to me. And as he's talking to me, I'm like looking at him and I'm like, his mouth's not moving. And I like realized we were like telepathically
Oh.
communicating, dude. And I was like, oh my God. And then fully like explored his mind and saw like all these things and all these like personality traits that he kept to himself that like he didn't let anyone else know. And remember the following day I told him, I was like, hey man, like I gotta tell you about this trip. Like I saw into your mind, dude. And said a whole bunch of things to him and he's like, bro, like I haven't told anyone that stuff before, like kind of thing. But um so yeah, after that I remember I was on the dance floor and hit this point where my consciousness like fully left my body. Um sorry, no, I was on the dance floor and had like an immense sense of like deja vu. And it was like, we've done this before. Like I can feel like we've done this before. Like it's very specific. And yeah, my consciousness like left my body at that point, and I could see my entire life on a like linear scale and could see the exact moment where I had dreamed this event happening from
Yeah.
like 10 months ago, where we all met up in the dream state and communicated and we're like, yep, we're going to do this and this is going to happen. And I was like, holy shit. And like, had this realization of that's what deja vu is. Like, deja vu is,
It's in the astral.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, in the dream state where you're in the multi-dimensional reality where you're able to explore all the probable realities and everything that you can possibly do. Deja vu is when you actually, the manifestation of a
Yeah.
probable event coming to fruition. And then I ended up in some multi-dimensional realm, and there's been a couple of people who have spoken about this phenomenon, but I ended up in this like multi-dimensional room, like limited language for this because don't know how
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
describe it,
There's
but
no
it
words
was
to
like,
express. Yeah.
yeah, like a non-physical room that I ended up in, and there were four different um, spirits or entities there who were like my family, pretty much. And they were
Yeah.
like,
Spirit
and
guides
they
and
were
family.
like, what's up, dude? And I was just like, but I, like, ego Brendan, physical Brendan, I had no idea who they were. But then I was there and I was like, wait, you guys are like, I see you guys every night in the dream state. Like, you guys are like my family, but I don't actually remember who you are as a human. And they're like, yeah, man, like it's crazy. But we're watching you and, this is like a really important incarnation of yours. And like, like you can always come and see us, but it's important that you have a level of amnesia as humans. So you do make the mistakes and you do, have these new opportunities arise out of the creativity and everything. And I was just like, holy shit, like blew my mind. And then, yeah, continued partying for ages, um, but yeah, that was my first like psychedelic experience, and I was like, I want to do that again. And yeah, so yeah, leading on, experimented with psychedelics very, very intensely. Like as I said, I've probably gone on at least 200 different trips, but learnt a lot. I've nearly died 3 times on psychedelics.
Do you want to touch on any of those moments?
Sorry?
Are you willing to touch on
Oh
any of
yeah,
those times?
100%.
Yeah,
Depends how long you want the podcast to go for though.
as long as you want.
But yeah, so basically, so going back to my friend Nick,
Mm.
so so he would kind of take me on trips, and we went on a few trips together, and he kind of went down a path where he was taking more and more and getting to this state, and he actually ended up almost losing his life on acid. And I remember going and seeing him because I'd go over there and be like, oh, I was like, had all these experiences and be talking to him about what I'm going through. And he'd never like really talk to me about what he was going through. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like,
Yeah.
but it was because he was kind of at the stage of like, he'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And but he nearly lost his life on acid and had a vial of it. And he was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna like get rid of this because it no longer serves me." I was like, "Oh, can I buy it off you?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, how much do you want for it?" He's like, "Oh, he's buy me a slab of Jack Daniels or something." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I got a full vial of like, I don't know, had at least so each drop was like 200 UG, and there was like 120 drops in there or something. Like it was an incredible amount.
That's a lot.
And I was like, cool. And then so got my hands on that, and
Dangerous.
yeah, yeah. And then that was right when we went into the lockdowns as well. So
Also dangerous.
yeah, so my life kind of consisted of working, and then on the weekends I just couldn't go outward, so I went inward kind of thing.
Mm.
And yeah, it was a very beautiful time, in all honesty, in my development. It was because I took it very seriously. It was never a case of, "Oh, I'm just gonna get like fucked up and see shit." It was like, I'm taking this to learn, and that was the sole intent of it. And so the weekend would come, usually like the Friday night, I'd take some acid, and then listen to music or go on a massive walk in the middle of the night and like go down the beach. Like it was always just like a journey of like connecting with nature and meditating and connecting with myself and learning more about music and all these kinds of things. And that was kind of like my weekly or fortnightly kind of practice, was just like taking acid and just going for walks in the middle of the night and all this kind of stuff. And it was really great because, I was learning a lot about myself. I was, one of the greatest things I learnt was unlearning, which is,
Yeah, conditioning and stuff.
realizing that, hey, maybe my parents didn't have it right, and maybe they didn't raise me fully correctly, and maybe I should try and figure this out for myself and learn these kinds of things. And, this was very much tied into, this was about when I was 25 years old, where, I don't know, about 26, where, it helped me turn my life around, because there was a very big sense of like, okay, if I'm super unhealthy and dealing with all these kind of physical ailments and stuff, like what's the difference between me and the next person? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I was like, it really comes down to your belief system. It's a belief that you're healthy and all these kinds of things. And just had this realization of like looking back and going, okay, well, how much of a say have I actually had in my own health? In reality, everyone in my family has told me that I'm sick. And I've had that reinforced every single day of my life and believe this stuff. So I was like, okay, what if I change this belief? And so I changed from being like, oh, I'm allergic to these things, to saying I'm not allergic. Like there's no reason for me to be allergic. Talking, constantly meditating and focusing on the abundance of the health in my body. That's when I also got into tree work. So I was around trees and breathing fresh air all the time. I was doing physical stuff. I took up doing Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. I was hitting the gym, eating properly, sleeping properly, all these kinds of things. And before you knew it, like all of my allergies had disappeared. The only one that I'm still yet to fully overcome is my anaphylaxis from peanuts.
Yeah, which is super
Which
common,
is
isn't it?
which is but in saying that as well, that developed when I was like, I was fine when I was young, but I got like some kind of vaccination when I was younger, and that's what triggered it.
In that book, it talks
Yeah.
about the diet, and it says like, not to, in the book, it's like
Mm.
very cautious of not going, we're not anti-vax.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
saying it can trigger stuff.
Mm.
It's not necessarily the vaccine that causes it, but it might
Yeah.
heighten something. So you might have had like a tiny bit of peanut allergy and the jab's just
Mm.
gone, all right, now we're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's and like I came up with this amazing analogy once where I was like, man, I felt undeserving of like realizing this and having this lesson to teach people. But I came to this realization where I was like, okay, we're told that our cells repair themselves every 7 years, but that's for someone who's not consciously repairing ourselves on a regular basis. And, like, I don't necessarily, believe's not the word, but I'm going to use believe, but I don't really believe in, say, like chemical imbalances in the brain and all these kinds of things. Like they do exist, but there's a reason that they exist. It's often, a physical response to mental trauma and
Yeah,
all
it's
these
cause and
kinds of
effect.
things.
Yeah.
And, I talk to a lot of people because people just believe so heavily in sickness. Like even like in a musical sense, everyone's worried about losing their hearing and all this kind of stuff. And I just say to them, I'm like, why don't you just repair your hearing? They're like, oh, I can't. It's like, why not? Because like they say that you can't. It's like, how does that make sense? Like, tell me why not? Why can't you repair your hearing? And the best example I have for people is that you can have, like, how is it possible that you're not able to repair the cells in your body when a grown woman can give birth to 10 perfectly healthy children who are perfectly healthy with all of these conditions that you happen to not be able to heal? It's because due to us being physical creatures and needing to see things to believe it, we see someone giving birth, it's like, okay, that makes sense, we can do that. But because there's not like the commonly held belief of being able to heal your body, people don't believe it. But that's where it starts from. Like the manifestation follows the belief. It's not the other way around.
Yeah. Dude, I've got a caption on a photo I posted, and it was like, people, like, you can heal a bone with unconscious
Yeah,
thought.
100%.
Imagine what you could do with conscious thought.
Well, yeah.
And the other thing is like the 4 minute mile. Like, remember that there was like, no one can break the 4 minute mile. Like, that's crazy fast. I don't know what decade that was in, 60s, whatever. Once that was done, record shattered because people thought it couldn't be
Yeah.
done. And once they see someone achieve it, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you can do it. Same as like all the people doing a marathon a day for 50 days, 100 Ks a day. It's like, because you can't fathom it, it's not achievable. As soon as
Yeah.
you see someone else doing it, like, oh, I can do that if they can.
And that is the thing, because like we do live in a world of like limitless possibilities. Like even levitation, just because no one has done it yet, it doesn't mean that it's not
Yeah, well, they say
possible.
monks do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
have you seen Wim Hof? Well, he did ice for like an hour and he
Yeah.
broke all the world records
Yeah.
for that.
Wim Hof is just an animal.
Yeah, and they put him in the fucking ice bath in the city outside in front of people, and they've got a heat sensor on him,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Can you heat up your hand?" So they had the, like, the green and red, the heat sensor, and they've got his body, and he just sends conscious thought of like, warm me up. It was his right hand, and it's the heat map starts going up on his hand. It's like, imagine what you can do. Like,
Yeah, 100%.
like, your mind is crazy.
Well, yeah, and like the mind creates matter. And it literally works like that. And so yeah, like I hit this point where I was like, well, why can't I be healthy? And literally began meditating and changing my beliefs. And there's because our body has its own brain, like all the cells in our body have their own brains, they have their own memory. So it's not necessarily just a case of like changing your beliefs and everything will happen at once. There's a lot of momentum with the way that your body is, but once you start changing that belief and you begin manifesting on a different probable reality of where you want to reach, it'll start building momentum into that and slowing down the other momentum. And now, like I do tree work every day, I hit the gym every day, I walk these two pests twice a day.
Twice.
Yeah.
Damn.
In the morning and in the afternoon. I'm constantly cooking, and then I'm trying to like start my own business. I have a band, like, I'm that locked in because I built that muscle up, and it built the manifestation muscle and my bodily, just my, what's the word for it? Like my productivity,
adapts,
my productivity and my capabilities. And so, it went very hand in hand of like, okay, I'm going to take this psychedelic tool to understand, my subconscious and the non-physical, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to apply it to the physical. And it became a very like, it was like I was going to school every time I taught psychedelics. And so, yeah, on that journey, being um, very ambitious, the doses got higher and higher and higher. And, I remember once it was getting pretty high. Like I think I was taking at one point about like 600 UG, like which is just like 6 tabs. And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I want to experience like 3 months of acid time and come back. And yeah, and like, apply it and everything. And, you have your moments where you meet God and or source or spirit or all that, like whatever word you want to apply to it.
Yeah.
And you feel the infinite capabilities of love and all of these kinds of things. And yeah, just kind of like kept going for it. And I remember there was this point in time that I hit where, I was on a path of self-discovery as well. Like I used to have, I mean, I do now, but I used to have like super long hair, lots of piercings and all that kind of stuff when I was really thin. And, but I had a big realization at the time that all of my confidence was in my hair. And I was like, yeah, I'm that like, I looked like Bones the rapper, if you know who that is, but like
Oh, I
I
do,
looked
yeah.
like identical to him pretty much. And I like, that was where my confidence was. And I remember kind of like looking in the mirror at one point, seeing how skinny I was and how insecure I was. And I had this moment where I was like, if I shave my hair off, I have to like, that will force me to better myself because I'm going to look disgusting. And there's a photo of me, man, where I look like a pedophile or something. Just how like I look fucked up. After I did it, I
Oh,
was like,
you legit full shaved your head.
yeah, I
Oh,
looked,
shit.
mate, like after I shaved my head, there's a photo of me that was on my like, I used to work with power lines, and it was like on my ID, and it was like convicted rapist. Like that's what I looked like, and I was like, holy shit, like I need to do something about this. So yeah, like really took eating and working out real seriously.
True.
And, but, like through this period as well, like, me and my partner at the time, we had split up and I was meeting new people and they were like really cool. But as I said, I had like this 4chan background and I was like meeting all these new people and I was just like saying super racist jokes and all this stuff. And they're
Yeah.
like,
Rubbing
bro,
up the wrong
bro,
way.
this isn't it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? I'm really funny though. And like, it went really bad and people were like, no, we don't like this dude. And I was like, oh, I don't like not being liked. Like, because I used to run some shit posting pages with a very significant following. Um,
Yeah, right.
like, I had this one page which had, in like 28 days, we had 4.8 million reach kind of thing. Like, massive amounts of following. And,
Feeds the ego.
online, I was like the king of, this whole humor movement kind of thing. And then like came to reality and I was like, okay, people aren't actually into this. And I'm like looking like a complete fucking idiot. So, that really brought on a lot of, I had to have like a lot of humility with myself and be like, okay, this isn't how I need to be acting. Like I need to actually change who I am as a person because, whether I've rationalized my humor and what I think is funny and that kind of state of it, I do want to be able to socialize. So therefore I have to learn how to do this and, behave in a more acceptable way. And it also kind of brought me out of that like hating the leftists mentality as well, because it really kind of, yeah, sat back and I was like, it's all just hatred, and you really kind of begin to learn that like, there's a really good quote, I think it's actually from a Seth book, but it was like, the only way to like have have peace in the world is not to be anti-war, but is to be pro-peace. And kind of just started having that mentality of like, okay, I want to be loving and like compassionate. And even if there is someone that I don't believe in their views or I feel like their views are harming others, I still want to kind of understand them so I can construct myself in a way that can further help people who need that. And so yeah, I was just hitting this point where, yeah, shaved my head. I grew this fucking sick mullet for a while. And then mullets became a thing and I got rid of it. And but I was making lots of successful moves. Like I started a new job and within, I went from being broke and struggling and in debt to earning 100 grand a year within a year and a half, and I was just thriving. I was looking better, I was healthier, I was stronger, I was happier, I was becoming more spiritually in tune. And I was kind of like getting better at meeting people, but then I was having like, learning social interactions and then having like weird, trying to meet the right girl and all these kinds of things. And we're in the lockdowns as well at the time. And I started having all these just crazy dreams for a while where it was like the dreams went forever and I woke up and I couldn't remember what was going on. And I wake up like, man, what the hell just happened? Like, I don't know what just went on. And so, yeah, continuously like, reading the Seth material, and I was like really, really focused on spirituality. And I just hit this point where I was like, I want to know everything. Like I just want to fucking get it.
Yeah.
And so there's one night I'm at home and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take 1,000 UG of LSD and just see what happens. So yeah, I remember this is genuinely the craziest story that I can tell. So I remember I was in the kitchen and I was like, all right, let's just drop 10 tabs worth of LSD. And it's also, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain that it was actually N-bomb as well, which is essentially like a less stable version of LSD.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so took it, and then like within 5 minutes, I was like, "Ah, shit! I think I might have made a mistake with this." Like it kicked in like
Oh, man.
immediately,
Okay.
yeah. And yeah, I remember, and this story gets pretty dark. Just a like heads up,
Warning.
just a heads up. It gets very dark. But so the previous trip that I'd been on, I was on my deck and I was looking out and I met God and it was like this amazing thing. And I was like, I want to do that again. And so I went outside with my dog, Xena, and I was sitting out there and waiting for it to all happen. I was like, oh yeah, cool. And then she was like, this is lame, I'm gonna fuck off. So she left. And then I remember I was just looking out and everything began to come together. And when you take there's a certain amount that you take at one point where you'll experience everything becoming one. And you experience all of the what I like to refer to as like anti-colors, like because you know how like
Yeah,
we
we can only
perceive
see so
we
much.
perceive things coming toward us, and it's like
Mm.
the depth grows. So that's where you get those reds and those purples and those blacks that are just like darker than dark that you've ever seen, but create like the geometric patterns of everything.
Mm.
And so all those colors started. I was like, yes, like let's go. I'm ready for this. Like let's do this. And it was all really good and everything was like going purple and then kind of started getting a bit too intense to the point where my body was disappearing. And I was like, okay, I don't really have much control over what's going on. And then all the color went from like all these wonderful colors to just going like black and a darker black. And this black just kept getting darker and darker and darker until it consumed everything and started to really, really overwhelm me. And it was like there was an infinite amount of bits of consciousness that were just, I don't know how to explain it. Like God, it was like God became very angry kind of thing and was like, okay, this isn't good. Like it's coming for me. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go inside. So I quickly went inside and closed the curtains. I was like, okay.
Lock the door.
I was like, okay, I'm all right in here. And then I went and sat down and I was like, okay. And for anyone who's taken large amounts of psychedelics, there are definitely points where it's like, okay, don't panic. And you have to kind of just make sure that you're sweet and you'll be sweet. And yes, I was inside and I was like, all right, this is getting pretty intense. Like, I'll just kind of do my comfort things. So there's a particular John Mayer album that I love called Continuum. So I was like, I'll put Continuum on. That's my favorite album. And I put it on and started playing and like he was singing backwards and the notes didn't sound right. And I was like, all right, this isn't normal. And yeah, and eventually it just kind of like got very intense, and I was just trying to like just calm myself down for a fair bit, and then realized that I didn't know where Xena was. I was like, "Where's Xena?" I was like, "Oh, she's outside." Because at some point, at some time, she kind of locked into like whenever I take psychedelics, she would like trip. It's crazy. I've even got a video of her like talking to a tree at one
Yeah,
point.
no
It's
shit.
it's it's wild. And so I went outside to find her, and she was like out in the dark, like wigging out, like she was full freaking out. Um, and I like called her name, and she started growling at me and got really aggressive at me. And I like quickly put my phone light on, and she like realized it was me and was like, "Oh my God, like this is not good." So I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
picked her up and took her inside, and yeah, we ended up sitting down on the couch, and I just remember like it just became super overwhelming. Like there was like this, it was like there was a helicopter in the house. Like the noise was just like, and it was just getting more and more intense, and the visions were getting like more and more static. Like everything was just becoming more and more and more and more and more. And I was like, all right, you're all good. You know, you've survived every other acid trip that you've been on. You can survive this. And it got so intense to a point where I can remember the moment I lost my mind. Like it went, there was like this noise. It was like a pin dropped, man.
Yeah.
And it just went, I can't handle this. And everything just like went fully chaotic. Like I fully lost my mind. Had like a full blown psychotic episode where the walls started caving in. I was seeing like demons jump scare flashing in front of me. Um, I started like it felt like the life was getting drained out of me. Like I started sweating and I couldn't breathe properly, and you know, all the color in the room was disappearing. It was like rather than seeing just normal wood or red or anything like that, everything became like this disgusting, like deathly kind of like vomity green, yellow kind of look. Even straight lines vanished. Like just the aesthetic of a corner turned into this weird,
Yeah, yeah.
like gross kind of, I don't even know, shape kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and the visions were so intense that like I looked outside and I couldn't even tell if it was day or night. It was like that hectic. It was like looking at the static of a television. Um, when I was looking at things, my vision was on its side. So like my head would be straight, but I'd be looking at things sideways. Um, when I was looking at things, it was like as if someone had hit a TV screen with a baseball bat. Like I couldn't actually see properly. It was like
Yeah,
all cooked.
fragmented.
And yeah, and I was just sitting on the couch and just it was like my mind was being like raped. Like it was just like this like so overwhelming. It's like the cells in my brains were trying to split themselves open to get out of it. And um yeah, it just got like mentally tortured to the point where I couldn't think thoughts anymore. And I was just, it like turned me into a vegetable pretty much. I was just having like this seizure where I was just like,
Yeah, yeah.
just stuck in this thing. And then looked over to me and Xena was like going through the same thing where she was like on her back and like freaking out. And I was trying to like grab her face. I'm like, just calm down. And she was like looking at me with just like full terror.
Fear
Like
God, yeah.
didn't even know what I was, couldn't even tell what I was. And yeah, it was like at that moment, the concept of surviving is just gone. It's like you genuinely are at that point where you're like, I've just died. Like this is the end. And um this was very much the whole dude turning into a glass of orange juice thing. It was like fully scrambled my brain. Like couldn't think thoughts, couldn't
Mm.
do things. Um and it wasn't even that. It was also that like time no longer existed either. It was like this is it.
Forever.
Like
Yeah.
someone's gonna come home and they're gonna put me in a room full of mattresses and that's gonna be my life for the rest of my life. And it wasn't even that. It was like I could see my family coming and seeing me, and I wouldn't even be able to like understand what they were saying to me because I was that like my brain was just completely scrambled.
Mm.
And yeah, it got to the point where I was like, man, maybe I should just like kill myself. Like I think this is the only way to do it. But it was also one of those things where I was like, killing myself isn't going to fix this, is it? Like this is beyond physical. Like I've fucked up.
Yeah, the
On
next realm, you're
a
still, yeah,
spiritual, like
yeah.
non-physical level, like I've like fucked up like so badly. Um, but yeah, it got to the point where I was like, you know what? It's actually going to be easier for my parents to find me dead than to see me in this state. And so yeah, and I was there and I was like, all right, how do I kill myself? And I had to think about it because I was like, I didn't know how to do it because I couldn't comprehend
Yeah.
thoughts, right? It took me like 20 minutes. I'm like, how do I do it? And I was like, oh, I guess I can like slit my wrists or like, like cut my throat or something. And I was like, how do I do that? I was like, need like something sharp, I think, a knife. And I was like, where are the knives?
It
Like
was that
this
fucked.
is how fucked I was, and
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out. And then eventually I was like in the kitchen, and I like got up and made my way to the kitchen and got like a kitchen knife, which I still funnily have. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, fuck, this is it. Like I was doing so well. Like everyone's gonna be so disappointed, and like everyone was kind of concerned about how much acid I was taking and all these things, and I was like, no, it's fine because I'm learning all this kind of stuff. And now I've just fucked it. Like I'm about to kill myself. Like I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And I remember I was sitting there and I remember pretty much like the last thought that was going through my brain at this point was, fuck, I can't believe I never released the music that I was working on. That was the very last thing that went through my brain. I was like, I can't believe that I never actually showed anyone my music. And I think I went to even write how for someone to find the music on my computer, and it was just like incoherent scribble. But yeah, I remember I was sitting there and I was like, fuck, this is it. Like, didn't think this was going to happen. And I was probably like not even 2 seconds away from doing it. And then I kind of look on the ground and we had this white carpet and there was this black square oscillating on the ground. And
Mm.
I was like, what the hell is that? And I fucking go down. It was my phone. And I was like, oh my God, I can call someone.
Oh.
Like, I was like, oh my God, I can fucking call someone. And I had this friend at the time called Hayden who I would trip with quite often. And I call him and he's like, hey man, what's up? I'm like, dude, you need to get to me right now. Like, I'm about to kill myself. Like, you need, and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I'm like, yeah, dude, like, I've went too far and I need you to get here, like, right now. I'm about to kill myself. Like, I'll kill myself if you don't come here. And he's like, okay, yep, dude, like, I'm on my way, like,
Yeah, yeah,
coming
yeah.
now. And yeah, I remember he's like, yep, hopping in the car and he's like talking to me.
Oh,
And
awesome.
he,
He said on the phone.
and
Yeah.
he's like trying to like crack jokes or say something like, bro, like I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, I just need you to tell me that you're coming here. Like, that's all I need to hear. And he's like, yep, dude. And then he's like, oh, I don't know what he said. He's like, oh, my phone's dying and I need to like use maps. So like, I can't stay on the phone with you, but like I am coming. And then he goes, because I lived in Mount Martha and there were like these two roundabouts that you had to go at. And he's like, oh, no, he goes, what's your address? And I was like, I don't know.
No.
And he's like, you don't know your address? I'm like, dude, I don't know what's going on. Like, I was that fried, like I didn't even know where I lived. He's like, oh, well, which way do you go at the roundabouts? And I was like, I don't know. Like,
Fuck.
I was like, you go up the hill and then down the hill. Like, I just couldn't comprehend the idea of even trying to picture like what he was talking about. And he goes, "All right, dude, like, hold tight, I'm on my way and I'll get there." And I was like, "All right." So then he hung up and I'm just there like, "All right, like this is one step closer." I'm still seeing like this demon just fucking torturing me.
Oh
And
no
like it
shit.
never stopped. It was like full hectic. And then half an hour later he'd call me back. I'd be like, "Hey man," he's like, "Hey dude, he goes, I'm on the way, but like my phone's dying. Um, which way do I go at the roundabouts?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like you go like up the hill and then down the hill again." And he's like, "All right, dude, like I'm still on my way, but like, yeah, all right, I got to go because my phone's dying." And I was like, "Okay." And then like half an hour later, he called me and he goes, "Hey man, I'm on my way." And he started,
Oh,
I
you're
was
in
in
a
a thought, I
loop.
was in a thought loop, and I was like, "He's not actually coming. Like this is just like I've just been like tricked by whatever
Something.
whatever demon this is that's trying to like torture me." He just gave me hope and took it away just as a fucking joke. And yeah, I eventually he did actually rock up at the house. Um, and it felt like a month of time before he actually got there. And he rocked up and he was like going back to like how tapped in Xena is, he rocked up and he was like telling me, he's like, he said he thought I gave acid to the dog, like she was that fucked.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, and I was there and he was like talking to me and he said that everything I said back to him was like a riddle. Like nothing that I said made any sense whatsoever. And yeah, he rocked up and I think I said to him, I was like, "Is it day or night?" And he's like, "It's night." And I was like, "What day is it?" Because I was like, I thought at least like 3 days had passed since
Mm.
it happened. And he's like, "Oh, it's Friday." And I was like, "What do you mean Friday?" He's like, "Yeah, Friday." I'm like, "What time is it?" He goes, and I was like, 9:30. And it like I'd been tripping for like 45 minutes at this point.
That's it.
That's it. Just 45 minutes. And I was like, I haven't even hit the peak yet. Like
You have to sit with me for a bit.
and no, but I still wasn't comprehending things. Like
Mm.
I knew that someone was there, but it was like I still didn't believe I was going to survive this whole thing. I thought I was like gone. And yeah, there was like even a point that I like vaguely remember like I like collapsed in the bathroom and I remember feeling like the coldness of the pile on my face and I was kind of grossed out by it at the same time. And he like walked in and looked at me because I was just like this, like just like
Yeah.
vegetable mode. And I remember him just looking at me. He's like, "What am I meant to tell your mum? Like, this is beyond."
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember we ended up outside or something. And at this point, I just remember being like face down on the concrete outside and hit this point where like basically hit a point where everything just like stopped. And the only like the best comparison I can give is like imagine like a Windows 98 computer and you're on it and you've got like an error comes up and you try and move the screen,
Oh,
it just like copies it all over the screen.
yeah.
And it was like everything just like stopped completely. Like time was gone, couldn't think thoughts, didn't have memory of what was going on, didn't know like where I was. And yeah, it was quite literally like my consciousness got fully erased. And I was in this state of like what I like to refer to as like unmanifest. There was nothing, but like there wasn't even nothing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was just I didn't have memory of anything. I couldn't conjure thoughts. I couldn't act, but I knew that I existed, and that was it. And it was like I was just here, and there was no time, and I was there for like
You know, in Homer, like the Simpsons episode where he goes into like the third
yeah,
dimension, and he's
exactly.
like, What is this?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh yeah, quite similar.
yeah,
And yeah, like time vanished, existence vanished, and I was there for like quite literally an eternity. Like, and that can only be experienced when time is not a thing. It's just like this state of non-existence. And I remember I was there for like for so long, like like just forever. And it got to this point where I was like, this can't actually get any worse. Like this is like the infinite depth of the opposite of life. Like it's and that's the thing. Like the opposite of life isn't death. It's like
Nothing.
yeah. And I remember like I started to regain memories of what life was. And it was just like this thing of like, I can't get that back. Like it's actually gone. And um, I remember I hit this state, I managed to get up and I was sitting down and I was like, all right, I have to somehow get myself out of this. Like how can I escape this place? And I had this thought where I was like, okay, what do I need? I was like, I need some kind of like anything, like some kind of energy, some kind of like portion of consciousness. And I was like, all right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna like, because I could still like see, but it was like everything was just like, you know how you go into say like you're watching a horror film and they go into the woods or a Halloween thing and everything's just crooked and
Mm.
dark. It's like everything was just black, like nothing had color to it. And I was like, okay, maybe I can somehow like conjure up just the smallest atoms of like consciousness that exist. And it sounds funny, but I quite literally did like a spirit bomb type thing from Dragon Ball Z where I
Yeah.
was like, I just need to like, and everything was only like black and white at that point. And I was like, all right, I just need to like get all this energy back to me. And I was like, all right, I just need to start on like the smallest portion of myself. I'll just focus on like the smallest cell in like my sternum and just focus the energy there. And I just sat there for like the longest time, just attracting and drawing in any consciousness that was left around the entire planet until it came up to me. And I focused it into this one cell in my body. And I could feel it slowly, like, just starting to, like, just come back to life. And I was like, all right, like, we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
We're getting somewhere. I've got one cell
Yeah.
that's back because I've managed to, like, get what I could. And I was like, all right, like, let's do this. Like, let's get a groove happening. We'll just start jamming a little bit. We'll just
Yeah.
start getting just a bit of a vibe happening in this one cell. And this cell just slowly, like, kind of started coming back to life. And I could see, like, like it was getting, like, had this, like, energetic fire to it. And I was like, all right, let's just, like, spread this to the cell next to it. And
Yeah.
just, like,
So
slowly start and slowly start and slowly, like, more and more of the cells were kind of like catching on and catching on and catching on. And then I was like, all right, like, we're kind of coming back. We're kind of coming back. I got myself to a state where I could like stand up again and kind of like figure out kind of what was going on. And I was like, all right, well, let's. And by the way, at this point, my friend had fucked off on me.
oh,
He
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 left
just left. Yeah.
because I was like, yeah, he's just here spectating.
Yeah, no,
Like,
he apparently left, which I didn't know.
like no shit.
Yeah, it's
Like,
just he's like, oh, he's fine. And yeah, and then eventually I was like, all right, I'm back, but like maybe I'll just explore. So I just started walking and Xena was following me. And I remember that's right. I thought that this was like, because this was through when all the lockdowns and everything was happening and all that, and everyone was like sick. And what I kind of internally experienced was like we speed ran the apocalypse, is what
mm,
logically made sense to me. So I was like, there's going to be people out there who don't know what's going, like it's dangerous out there. So I found this like gardening tool thing and I was like, this will keep me protected, like this gardening tool. And I was just in shorts and like no shoes or anything, no shirt, because like it was summer still. And I was like, all right, let's go. Like, and I just started walking And as I was walking, I was like, I can feel everything coming back to me. Like I can feel it all coming. And I could feel like this energy growing. And as soon as it had like hit my fingertips, the entire world just exploded with this flourishing energy and everything came back to life. And like all the trees were alive and dancing and moving, and there were gods in the sky and UFOs and shooting stars. And like, it was like the most intense, beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, oh my God, like we're back. Like we made it. And Zena's like running around all excited. And I was like, oh my God, like let's go. And we just started running.
Yeah.
And so like just started running and I was like, oh my God, like I'm alive. Like I got out of this. And I remember we're running along. And as we're running, there's this fucking dog in the middle of the road. And it's like 2 a.m. And this dog's like, what the fuck? And I was like, oh, dude, are you all right? Like, because I thought in my head, I was like, everyone just went through this horrific experience. And this dog's kind of like, why is there a half naked dude and his dog in the middle of the street, like in the middle of the night? And for me, I was like, oh my God, is your family all right? And the dog was kind of like, oh, you guys are kind of cool. Like, yeah, this is where my house is. And so in my state of mind, I was like, oh, I need to check that the family's
They're-
right. So I start trying to break into this fucking house.
No.
So I start like trying to get into this house and I'm like, I have to make sure that they're all right. I'm looking for like spare keys and everything. And like, thank God.
Just come with a gardening tool
Mate,
in just shorts.
Mate, thank God I didn't make it in. But I was like, oh, like at this point, I was like, I need to make sure like people are all right. So I was on a mission from God now. Like, where I was like, I have to go. And so Zena and I were like, right, we're gonna head off. Like, do you want to come with us? And he's like, oh, I don't know about this. I was like, all right, you stay here, and I'll come back for you. And I remember I left the gardening tool like
with the dog
in front of their door, man. So like, if they were home, they would have heard someone trying to break in, and then like they wake up
left
and
a
there's like
weapon.
a weapon like at the scene. But in my state, I'm like, yeah, like, we got to go. We got to help everyone. So we're like just running, man, like sprinting, and like this is Mount Martha. Like there's like dirt roads and like bush, like barefoot, like just going for it. And I remember this is the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me in my life, right? Because I got away with the break-in, right? So,
Yeah.
So I'm running along, fucking running along, and I get to this point, and all of a sudden, so we had these family friends that we grew up with, and we used to like walk Xena with their dog, and all of a sudden I was like outside their house, and Xena's like, oh, it's like such and such's house. And I was like, oh, it is too. And she's like all excited. And so this particular family, basically back in, I think 2010, 11, their oldest son passed away from a freak accident. And it obviously like destroyed the family kind of thing. And I look over at their house and there's just like darkness and gloom, and I could just feel how much pain they were in. And I was just in this state of like abundant love, and I was like, I can help them. So I go up right through the gate and I start like knocking on the door, and I fucking woke them up, right? And they're like, who is it? I'm like, it's Brendan. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, it's Brendan. They're like, why are you here? And I was like, oh, just like, I need to like tell you guys something. Like, and they're like, what? And they come outside and they just see me like, just half naked, like no shoes on, just off my fucking dial.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And I got really confused because I was, you
didn't experience this? Yeah.
I was like, it was almost like a young, really excited child. And all of a sudden they're like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you don't want to see me? I don't understand. And I was like, no, guys, you got to see like what I've done for you. Like, you got to see the sky and everything that I've created here. Like, I've done it for you guys and all this. And they're like, you need to get out of here. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I was like really confused and like didn't know how to act. And then their fucking dogs got out, and like I was like, okay, I guess I'll leave. And so like me and Zena just like fuck off, and I just start running up the road, and their dogs get out apparently. Like I don't know what happened, and then I think at this stage, I think I like circled back to my house, and at this point I was like, all right, I need to help everyone, and I was like, how can I do this? And I was like, what's like the ultimate like spiritual music? And I was like, Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. So I get my stereo right, subwoofer full volume, full, like turn the whole thing full volume, open all the windows and all the doors of the house, and just start like Shine On You Crazy Diamond, like album, like 2:30 in the morning at this point. And I was like, I'm gonna let this play and we're gonna go. And I just like leave the house and start running. And then
My God.
and then I'm like, so I started thinking about, so we're talking about like sound manipulation and everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was thinking about it. I'm like, what's the most like economic way to like get a message across? And I was thinking about like dogs and wolves and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, like they howl, like, and they project this energy. So I was like, I'm just gonna like start howling. So here's this like fully cooked cunt, like half naked, like off his dial, just like sprinting while like howling at the top of his voice. I remember this woman came out of her house. So, and she was like, yelled something at me. I was like, what? And she's like, the cops are gonna get you. I was like, what are the cops gonna do? We're in an apocalypse. Like,
Bro, it sounds like you're on bath salts.
mate, yeah, it was full. And then I just like kept running, right? And so I think I even live streamed this on some page that I had on my phone at some point as well, with me like fully cooked. But eventually, like I was running for so long and howling for so long, I remember I started vomiting while running. Like I was full throwing up on myself. But from what I understood, because I believe that, well, in the Seth teachings and everything as well, he talks about. So this is where it got really cooked. So there's a thing where, so Seth talks about an ascension of consciousness, basically.
Yeah.
And so he basically says that within 50 years of 2070, there's going to be an ascension of consciousness where we enter a state where we won't have a lot of the problems that we have now. We'll have complete access to our reincarnational cycle, our future self, our past selves. We'll have telecommunication, telepathy,
Telecommunication. Yeah, I think we've got that.
all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But he explains that the way that this is going to come across is related to Christ, right? So, and he talks about Jesus and everything that happened, right? So what he goes into is he goes back to, religion and Christ in general, and basically says that Jesus wasn't the only incarnation of Christ at that time. It was actually John the Baptist, Jesus, and this bloke named Saul, right? So they were all part of the same entity that chose to incarnate at the same time, at that point in time, to elevate consciousness on a mass level. And this is why, we do have like the Prophet and Muhammad and all these kinds of things.
Yeah, because
But
it's a state of, it wasn't a person, it's a state of consciousness.
Yeah.
That's why they call it Christ consciousness or become the Buddha.
Yeah.
Buddha's not like, when people think like, don't put, I mean, put your faith in Christ, but like, it's like same as what we're talking about with healing. You can actually achieve that.
Well, it's one of those, something that I like became aware of is it's very important to separate Christ from Christianity, right? So, but I do believe that Jesus was real and all of this was real. But
yeah.
the reason that, we're talking about the Father and God and Jesus is that at that point in time, it had to be a male for
That's what
it to
he
be
believed.
accepted
Yeah.
at that time. And so John the Baptist was Christ as well. And he did the pre-work for what Jesus would do. Then Jesus existed and he shared the message. And it wasn't all this like, all the shit that's in the Bible. It was, divine ancient information of love and abundance and creativity and reincarnation and all of these kinds of things. He wasn't against gays or anything like this. It was very much like, we are here to experience being human, to aid in the expansion of consciousness. And that's what it was about. So he sent the message And then after him was Saul, which was the third incarnation of Christ, right?
Yeah.
Luna, get down, get down, the camera's on. Yeah, and so Saul was essentially meant to preserve the integrity of the messages that Jesus put across, but turned out to be a rapist and a murderer and a thief, and went off the rails in his path and did all of these heinous acts for whatever reason, because yes, we do have fate, but we also have free will. And part of his, despite being aware of what his role was and his nature was, and being part of Christ, he still went and did all these heinous things. And it wasn't until later in his life that he repented for these sins and changed his name to Paul, which is where we get Saint Paul from. So he was the third incarnation of Christ.
Shit.
But due to this, you know, the Bible is a very distorted version of what the initial teachings were. It was basically like, imagine if we just had a yarn and then someone was like, I'm just going to write that down. And then 2,000 years later, we are where we are.
Yeah.
So what Seth explains is that within 50 years of 2070, essentially Saul's portion of the Christ entity is going to create his own entity, and that's what's going to elevate a mass awakening of consciousness, not just physically, but in all dimensions, in a lot of ways. And so talks about, this incarnation of Christ being alive in this day and age, leading up to this. And so as I'm running, I remember I'm down at the beach, and again, I was like doing all this howling and shit, and I could see the way that my voice was affecting matter. And I was at the beach, and I was like, maybe this is how Moses split the sea, through sound manipulation. I was seeing all these kinds of things. And I started thinking, and I had all these things ticking in my head, and I was like, what if I'm the incarnation of Christ? And then I thought about it, and I was like, wait a second, like, I learnt this through the Seth teachings, and Seth first communicated with Jane on the day that my dad was born, and my dad gave me this, and it all of a sudden it all started to make sense, and I was like, it'll make sense. And I was like, I'm the incarnation of Christ. I was like, but how do I convince everyone of this? Right? So I'm in this like fully cooked state down on the beach with my dog. And then, I'm at this this place where I grew up, which is like a very to me, a very holy connection that I have with this land and everything. And I was like, man, Jesus was like a shifty prick. Like he kind of turned water into wine and did all these crazy things. Pretty hard to defy that he was Christ. Like, how am I going to do that? I was like, oh, maybe I'll like meditate for 30 days. But I was like, nah, so anyone can fucking do that. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk around the entire continent until I get back to this spot. And I'm going to make sure that every single person in the world, because in the state that I was in, I was like, the population's been decreased. It's gotten rid of all of the, the asleep people who haven't, not necessarily that they don't deserve to be awakened, but they haven't followed their spiritual path yet, or maybe they're early in their reincarnational cycle. So in my head, I was like, all right, there's probably closer to say like 200 million people alive. And so I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk around the entire continent until I get back here. And once everyone knows that they're loved and they're safe and that, they're okay and that everything's great, I'm going to get back here, and then we'll raise the sun and we'll have the first day of year one. And it'll be like the most amazing celebration. And so I'm like, all right, let's go. So I just start running, right? Along the beach. I start running and I'm coming up with all these ideas. I'm like, okay, anyone who's born is going to inherit land. So no one is in poverty. And, we're not going to have to consume animals because we're in this heightened state. And I'd been running for like fucking 2 hours at this point and had unlimited energy. So I was like in this state of like, oh,
I can do this forever.
I can do this forever. So we don't need to consume animals and kill and all these kinds of things. And then, I had all these crazy realizations about how the internet is actually our physical creation that's actually a download of what like psychic abilities are. It's like a
Yeah.
physical manifestation of
It's
all
like
these kinds of things.
I draw the same comparison as like AI is consciousness.
Yeah,
But like it's like
yeah,
the
yeah.
physical manifestation and like the involuted opposite version of like
Well,
all the things that we're trying to do with our brain, they're like out or mind, consciousness is what they're outsourcing and trying to put it into
well,
it.
the way someone said this like very interestingly. Someone said to me that what AI is actually second dimensional creatures trying to ascend to third dimension.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's sick.
literally it.
But yeah, so I keep fucking running, man. And keep in mind, I'm still in bare feet like this whole time. And I'm coming up with all these ideas, and I'm like, oh yeah, like we'll finally be able to like, you know, give, like gay people the same rights that everyone has. There'll be no like, there'll be an understanding of race, as in like, you know, that we're all human, but it's important to have each of the races and how important all of the cultures are and all these kinds
Mm.
of things. And it was just like all about equality and all these like just abundance of love and all of these kinds of things. And I'm running and I'm running and running. At this point, I'm like at this cliff face that I have to climb up because I've just somehow got to this spot and I'm like climbing through bushes and shrubs and Zena's like, what the fuck is this, man? Like, what are we doing?
She's still going.
Oh yeah, she's with me the whole time.
Legend.
We're running up this cliff face and my feet are getting all cut open and stuff. And I remember I like end up at the road and I sat down and I was like, all right, I gotta just like quickly heal my feet. So I just sat down, meditating on healing my feet. I remember I was sitting in the middle of this road and there were like cars going by and stuff, but the way that I was perceiving them, it was like they were like guardians, like making sure that everything was going correctly and
Mm.
stuff. And then I remember I was outside this house and this woman comes out to go to her car and she's like, nope, and goes like straight back inside after seeing me.
Yeah.
And then she comes back outside with her husband and they're like watching me and she like gets in her car or something. And I was like, I can't remember what I said, but I was like, oh, you don't have a phone charger, do you? And he's like, nah. And I was like, is there any chance you could like go on Facebook or something for me? And then he was
Tell
like,
everyone.
nah, dude, like, no. And then I can't remember like exactly how I phrased this. I was like, oh, you might not be aware, but you're actually in the middle of witnessing a biblical event. Like the dude's like, okay, and just like fucked off inside.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like sitting in the middle of the road, just like meditating. There's like cars going around me and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is how we're gonna do it. And like I'm gonna like do this and do this and do this. I mean, this is gonna like come up with all these like creations and stuff. And then I'm like, start looking up, and like the sky was going orange, and like the sun was coming up, and I was like, I didn't say you could do that. And I'm like looking at the sun come up. I'm like, go back down. We're not done yet. And then it kept coming up, and I was like, kept coming up, and I was like, could I have just imagined this whole thing? And I was like, holy shit. And I'm like 5 kilometers from my house now, like fucking ages away. I'm in bare feet. My dog's not on a lead. People are like getting out of their houses to go to work and shit. And I was like, oh my God, I just tried to break into someone's house and I just woke my family friends up and I've just like left Pink Floyd blasting with all my
Oh,
doors and windows open. And I just fucking live streamed this to like 50,000 people. I need to get fucking home right now. And I just started running all the way back to the fucking house, man, like faster than I've ever fucking ran in my life. Just like panicking, 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 panicking. Get home. The music had stopped, but like the front door was still open. So I don't know if like
someone's come and turned it on.
someone's come in and turned it off and fucked off or like what's happened. And then got home, plugged my phone in, like delete the live stream, messaged my friend. I'm like, hey dude, like took some hectic drugs last night and I may have woke your parents up in the middle of the night. Like, can you apologize to them for me? Turn my phone off. And then I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, that was just the most crazy thing that's ever happened in my life. And then I remember my dad got home and I was like, Dad, you won't believe what I just did. I was like, look, kind of took a bit too much acid, kind of lost my mind, kind of woke our family friends up in the middle of the night, in case you hear about it. I'm a bit traumatized by it. Like I just
So he
woke up.
knew about your acid taking
I
previously.
don't think he knew about it. Well, maybe he was like he had an idea that I'd fucked around with it before, but
Yeah, yeah. Or like drugs in general. Like, he's just like, was he like, wait, what? What?
yeah,
Like,
I don't know. But then I was like, went outside, I just like smoked a joint, put on that John Mayer album. And I was like, all right, I need to go to bed.
yeah,
But then, yeah, I remember I went to bed and I woke up and I was still like tripping balls. And I was like, maybe I am the incarnation of Christ because he'd have these abilities. Like, just like
yeah.
went down this weird path. But yeah, eventually, like, after that though, like I became very suicidal. Like that, yeah, that like really fucked me up. Because yes, it went really good at the end, but that as a whole experience was so traumatic and
Mm,
like, because basically what happened is, I had been on this journey, but like, you always believe that like the universe is safe and that it's loving and all this kind of stuff. But I experienced being tortured by God. Like I
mm.
got tortured to the point where like I no
Within
longer,
an inch of your
yeah,
life.
like
Yeah.
and it was like, man, everything that I believed has just been shattered and like I don't feel safe existing anymore.
Mm.
And for months after that, man, like I was having panic attacks every 15 minutes. Like um I'd be sitting there and start tripping and the walls would start caving in and I'd start seeing things and I'd
Oh,
start
you're having
it was
them.
full it
Yeah.
was full blown like schizophrenia really
Yeah.
is what I gave
Yeah.
myself. Psychosis, schizophrenia, and trying to just go to work and act like everything was all right because there's no one you can talk to about that. Like
Yeah.
try finding someone who survived going through something like that who's actually like okay afterwards.
Mm.
It doesn't happen. And yeah, for ages, man, like it was like there was something always following me. That's what it felt like. But it was like if I wasn't aware of it, it would sneak up on me and get me. But then if I focused on it, it would manifest.
Yeah.
And yeah, I became in this state where it was like anxiety was no longer a feeling. It was everything else was anxiety around me. And I was just in this environment.
Mm.
And I remember I was just cruising home in my prelude, playing with the VTech, just chilling. And everything just became fucked. Like everything just went real bad. And I was like, I can't handle this anymore. Like, it wasn't just a case of that. It was like my entire sense of um, happiness and joy was not there. I was just like, can't, I can't like function anymore.
Mm.
And I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to kill myself. I can't do this. And had this moment of like, you know what? Fuck it. Kill myself, reincarnate. It's going to take a bit to get back to this point, but fuck it. Like, I can't handle this anymore. And I had this moment where I was like, wait a second, dude. Like, no. You got yourself out of a worse situation. You can get yourself out of
Mm.
this. And funnily enough, because I didn't read the Seth books for a long time after that, because I was like, kind of led me to this, and everything you've told me is complete fucking bullshit. And now I've like mangled my brain, and I can't I can't function anymore.
Mm.
And eventually, so I was reading the second. Oh, it's not the second Seth book, but there's another Seth book called The Nature of Personal Reality. And I remember I finally kind of sat down, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna just open the book and start reading it again. The very next page is about LSD overdoses.
No shit.
Yeah, dead set.
They always come to you at the perfect time.
Mate.
I do like a meditation group.
Mm.
It's basically a religion, spiritual school of thought, called Gnosis. Alan Watts has mentioned it
Oh
before.
yeah, cool.
And I was listening to a Ram Dass podcast. Haven't listened to one in months. Put it on last night and he's talking about intuition.
Yeah.
Open up the book last night, intuition. I was
Yeah, there
like,
we go.
what the fuck? Yeah. So, yeah.
But yes, was like talking about LSD overdoses, and the very first thing he says is because I would tell people, I was like, yeah, like I've experienced like the walls of reality caving in and stuff, and he was like, on large amounts of LSD, you can experience the walls of reality caving in. Used all these exact phrases that I used to explain my experience, but then went into detail where he's like, you should not be taking LSD. The reason for this is because it is not an organic substance and your brain is not actually designed to cope with it. And so on smaller doses, of course, like you can handle it. But the way that it works is that it's not that, and these aren't Seth's words, these are mine, just because I like to maintain the integrity of what he talks about.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
of course.
the way that I interpret it is that when you take LSD, it's not necessarily that you have a spiritual experience, it's that it simulates a spiritual experience. So everything you're experiencing is still completely valid, but very much like the Bible to Jesus' teachings, it's distorted. It's a distorted version of what the reality actually is.
Yeah, it's like processed food or fake meat.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
it's
Yeah, yeah,
imitated.
exactly. And so, but through organic substances like psilocybin mushrooms and DMT and ayahuasca and all these kinds of things, you can have very valid spiritual experiences using these things. But in saying that, they are tools to be utilized, and you don't need to take psychedelics to access psychic information and develop yourself in those ways. And once he said that, I was like, oh my God, like, okay. And essentially what had happened to me, because when he was talking about like large amounts of acid, he was talking about like 300 microdoses kind of thing, whereas I did 1,000. And he says that when you take such a large amount, you actually place a psychic assault on your mind, and to escape you place a psychic assault on your mind to which you have no defense for, and you essentially slaughter yourself, and that the molecules in your brain will quite literally try and split themselves in half to escape it. And in doing this, you don't just kill your ego, you fucking obliterate it. And a lot of people talk about ego death and wanting to experience ego death, and it's actually not a healthy thing to do.
No,
Like
because your ego wants to stay alive, so
it's-
it's not going to be a good experience.
it's very, very unhealthy, because what happens is that once you do this, because the body can't survive without an ego, you'll kill the ego. A new ego will arise, but it also has the memory of what happened to its predecessor. And so this new ego that arises does not trust physical reality, because the previous ego who was in physical reality got killed doing that. And so you have this distrust of reality. And that's where I was, except it wasn't just one ego that got obliterated, it was about 1,000 of them. And that's why I was in such an intensely traumatized and damaged state, because I just what I experienced was worse than death. It was complete annihilation of the psyche, pretty much. But from this, I began to understand, okay, maybe I can somehow recover from this. And I was still seeing crazy shit. Like, I would go outside at night and start freaking out because that tree looked funny and it started taking weird shapes toward me. But what I began to understand is that it wasn't necessarily that the things that I was seeing were evil or harmful or anything like that. It's just that I had blown the doors off the spirit to physical communication, that I was simply seeing energies or entities or whatever that weren't actually tailored to exist in physical reality. And this is very much so what schizophrenics and psychosis experience. They're actually tapped into something higher, where they're actually in contact with beings that aren't designed for physical reality.
Yeah.
And due to their perception of them and their unsureness and it being completely foreign to what we experience, it comes as scary.
Yeah,
And
there's no words to
you can't experience
communicate
it.
what
Yeah.
that is, so people are just like, you're fucking nuts, because there's
Yeah.
no words to explain it.
And so the way that I actually recovered from it was being like, okay, this is going to be the most terrifying thing for me, but I'm going to trust this, and I'm going to trust that this is just a language that I need to learn. And from exposing myself to these new energies and these very like overwhelming experiences, I actually began to understand what they were and how to communicate with them and how to receive certain information. And over time, I was able to actually fully comprehend what had happened to me as an experience that I put myself through in order to, because the thing was, is that like, because I did take psychedelics again afterwards to kind of understand what went on. And I was very much so like, why did you put me through that? You know, God or whatever you want to refer it to said, well, you put yourself through it, you know? And I said, well, I nearly fucking killed myself. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was two thoughts away from literally slitting my wrists. And he goes, mate, you're never going to do it. Like, but
Pussy.
yeah, no, it was like, you were never going to do it. But what better way to teach you than to make you believe that you were actually capable of doing it, or that was an actual possibility? He goes, there was a lot of like all these crazy dreams that you were having and all these things. You were putting in the subconscious groundwork to make sure that everything was going to go to plan. And now what you have learned from this is you have literally learned what reality is. You experienced non-reality, and then you also learned how to manifest reality for yourself. And so, yeah, like, I guess to put it simply, I learned what the meaning of life was in that experience. And from there, because, you know, what I went through was so beyond anything, like I experienced horrors beyond human comprehension. Like that's exactly what it was. But the gift of that is that I can now empathize with anyone. It's like, okay, I've been through worse than what you can even comprehend, and now, but I can relate to you. Like I get it because I've been through that spectrum and I see where you are and I can help you through it. And so, yeah, from there, started experimenting with mushrooms and more organic substances instead, and had magnificent results, and you know, really helped me develop. But you know, I don't know, is it Alan Watts? I don't know who actually said it, but you know, they say that the entire purpose of taking psychedelics is so you don't have to take psychedelics anymore. And the truth is that everyone has latent psychic abilities that they can develop, and you don't need to take psychedelics to develop them. It just takes meditation and going inward and reading the right material and possibly even having like psychic mentors to help you develop these abilities. But
yeah, like having a PT.
yeah, exactly. But you know, where I'm at in my journey now is that it's not even that I don't want to do psychedelics, it's that there's an intuitional feeling within me that says, no, like you're done with this. Like you've learnt the lessons that you can learn from these. Like, of course, maybe once a year or once every 2 years or something, if there's a particular reason that I feel like they could be of benefit for me in a certain situation, sure, I'll probably indulge in them. Or, for example, there's someone who needs help getting to a higher place and I want to take them on a trip or something, I'd do that. But everything is completely accessible, completely sober, just through slowly developing your own psychic abilities. But yeah, that was the massive one. And that happened, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. And yeah, there hasn't been a single day that I haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
Like every single day I've thought about
It's
that.
life changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like in a lot of ways, like, you know, it was a rebirth for me. Like this version of myself was born that day of, oh, and her, you know, she went through it as well.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
why, you know, we have such a intense connection.
Mm.
But yeah, craziest thing that's ever happened to me, man. And yeah, I guess just through that, like, went to a couple of more doofs and then eventually ended up at ESO and meeting, you know, coming across you. And then, you know, obviously entering the field of, you know, abundant love. And because the thing was as well is that, like, with my ex-partner, you know, something that really got me on this path is that she had been through a horrible upbringing, like sexual abuse, physical abuse, in and out of foster homes, all of these kinds of things. And 2 days before meeting her, I had an extremely vivid dream of meeting her, essentially. And it was so vivid that I wrote it down, and I have it written down somewhere. And 2 days later, met her. And upon meeting her, I was like, oh, this is like my soulmate. Like I knew it immediately. And, but in that relationship, she had been so horribly abused growing up. And at the age of, 12 or 13, finally went to a psychologist or something like that. And did a test, and they're like, okay, like, you have suicidal tendencies and, all these and anxiety and yada, 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 yada. You have borderline personality disorder of the most severe degree. And this means that you have a chemical imbalance and this and this and this and this. You can never heal from this. But what we can do is we can put you on medication. It's going to make your life more manageable. And, as a young girl, going to a medical professional and being told that, that sets a root belief that it's very, very hard to break. And at that point of my development, I wasn't capable of helping her get through that.
Yeah, and you firmly believe the opposite as well. So
Yeah,
it'd be so hard for you to be like,
absolutely. And so we were together for exactly 3 years. Broke up on our third anniversary. And but that was a very painful relationship to go through. Like, one time felt something was off, went to her house, she'd like tried to commit suicide, like got her to the hospital, turned out that she was, taking a lot of drugs that I wasn't realizing, like just fully spiraling without me realizing, but, kind of keeping it under wraps to a certain degree. But, like being in love with someone that, but not so much that, but like, you have this soulmate that you do anything for, and then just like watching the person you care about most become completely broken, like ending up in a psych ward and, nurturing them back to health and having a cat team check in to make sure that everything's all right. And just seeing like the hope just fucking vanish from someone's eyes. It's just like the most painful thing I've ever seen. And, I did what I could for as long as I could until it got to the point where, again, I was extremely unhealthy and going through my things. And it got to the point where I was killing myself to try and save her. And, I got to this point where, going back to, I was becoming spiritually aware, and I could see my future self, and I could see this version of myself being like, come on, you need to become this person because there's a larger purpose for you. And I remember she had this room where she would like sell clothes and all this kind of stuff. And I remember she was sitting down, and I went up to her, I was like, look, we need to have a chat, because I started kind of experimenting with, I wanted to make like YouTube videos and stuff, just basic stuff like the importance of exercise and vitamin D and this can help. And I remember I went and made a video just talking about these things, and I was like really excited. I was like, oh, hey, like made this video just talking about, like how exercise and all these things can like just really help. And she fucking like cracked the shits at me over it. She's like, that's not how it works. You need to have this and this and this, and not everyone, and fully blew up at me. And I was like, this isn't it. Like this isn't how it's meant to be. And yeah, I remember saying to her, I was like, this is where I'm going to get to. I'm going to get here no matter fucking what. You can either come with me or you can stay here. And that's as simple as it is. And her response was, well, what if I can't? I was like, you can, but it's up to you. And then, yeah, so we started seeing each other on Valentine's Day, and then it hit Valentine's Day, and, I couldn't fake it anymore. You know what I mean? And she kind of came out. She's like, look, understand that, you've like, you don't love me anymore and all this kind of stuff. And, I think like, maybe it's time we do call it. And I was like, fuck, this is like, it felt like I'd like failed, you know what I mean? But it was also very relieving at the same time. But, after that, her life didn't improve. It got a lot worse from, I heard from people, and it was like very validating, but at the same time very painful to hear about. Whereas, I significantly developed in a very good way. But yeah, I just remember having this moment where I was like, could I have been wrong? Like, is it actually possible that she could not have actually healed herself, and that I'm just completely wrong about all this, and that some people are just broken and there's nothing you can do? And I just had this moment where I was so angry about what had gone on, and I was like, no, I refuse to fucking believe it. Like, I refuse to believe that I could not have helped her if she was willing to. And the magnitude of this, like, this emotion that I had, man, I felt like it could have shattered worlds, like how strong it was. And yeah, I just had this moment where I was like, from now on, everything that I do in my life is going to be in the purpose of making sure that no one has to fucking go through what she went through.
Yeah.
And that's what really fucking put me on my path, where I was like, I need to live for other people now, because I've got this experience. I've gone through this insane experience that I've somehow survived, and have the ability to articulate information that most people aren't capable of receiving at this point in their lives. And yeah, from then on, and I'm sure you feel the same, like the best way to help people is to help yourself and to set an example and lead by example.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where we are. And, slowly but surely you manifest and you attract people of like-mindedness. And, it's more important than ever, because at this point in time, due to the rapid succession of technology and the internet, like, we're literally experiencing a frontier of technology where people are not used to dealing with being, always looking at social media and doom scrolling and feeling insecure because of all the perfection that's there and all this fakeness. And, fortunately enough, like, for people like you and myself and, like, Matt as well, and like this group, like, it's so important that we're around to help, young men and women and the next generation of children as well, or even like the generation above us who were able to kind of get away without being affected by this until now, to set the example and to create spaces where people can heal and they can learn and be vulnerable and express themselves, and to, again, like, rebuild their belief systems on what reality really is, because, like, shit's fucked.
Yeah. And I think it's like you said it earlier in the piece, unlearn a lot of things from
Yeah.
people, because like fuck, we're being conditioned to think that your life is doomed to a certain way because of an experience you had as a kid, or what your parents told you, or a doctor told you, or your teachers told you. And like, we're here to show you that that's fucking not
Yeah.
the way you have to live your life.
And yeah, like the way to look at it, and yeah, like the best way to kind of look at it is that it's like, imagine your life is like a figurative home. Yeah, but the home's been built on the bricks of belief that have been installed in you. And some of these beliefs aren't good, like boys shouldn't cry. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like just
Yeah, don't show emotion, it's weak, like that
things
type of
like
shit.
that. And like things you got bullied for, like, you have a big nose, or like this and that, or people won't be attracted to you, or you have all these allergies and you can't gain weight, and all these things that I had. But when you learn to just fucking bulldoze that whole house, like, I remember my first, like, full mental breakdown where my whole world just came crashing down. And it was the night that I moved out from my ex's house, or our house, and was with myself. And again, utilized psychedelics to kind of reach this state. But I was like, I need to understand what's going on here. Like, how is it that I dreamed of this person, met them, and they're like my soulmate, and then it didn't work? Like, how do I understand this? And I remember I was sitting there and took some acid. It wasn't too much. And, things weren't making sense. I was like, I don't understand. Like, I feel like I should be learning something. I don't know. Like, I just want the answer. I don't get it. And I was sitting there, and I put some music on and it just wasn't affecting me the right way. And remember, I had one of my guitars sitting there, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just play some guitar. So I like grabbed my guitar and just put it in my amp and put it on the clean channel. And I was just playing like my own songs, but just clean and kind of singing them and getting along. And because, when I was in that relationship, I was completely like, had a complete drought of creativity because I wasn't enjoying myself and I couldn't express myself the way I want. And I wasn't recording music and I wasn't doing stuff with my band because I was just so frustrated and all this stuff. And I just started like playing these songs, and very quickly I kind of like, it's like it put me back in touch with myself. And I came to realize that like these songs aren't just like pieces of music that I threw together. Like they're literally like an expression of my soul and my own emotions. And as I became, it's like I realized who I was again, and I just like, tears started coming out
Fuck
as I was
yeah.
playing, and I was like, fuck, like, man. And I had this realization. I was like, I haven't been happy for a long time. Like, and I was looking back and I was like, was it the relationship? I was like, no, it's further than that. And it was like, I hadn't been happy since I was like 12 years old. Just, high school, just getting bullied and everything that I went through and not fitting in, and then relationships and getting cheated on, and then other relationships and, the suicides and like just everything. And it was like, I'd just been carrying so much just grief for what had been like 13 or 14 years at that point. And I just started crying, man. And I was like, fuck, like I haven't had anyone that I've been able to be vulnerable around, because I've always been like the leader of the group and having to be there for everyone. And I just remember, yeah, I was just like crying, and I was just so sad. But then I was like, man, like I don't have anyone in my life. And then I was thinking about it, I was like, actually, no, like I've got some really great friends. Like, I've got this dude and this dude and this dude. Funnily enough, all three of them ended up betraying me. But, then I'm sitting there and, yeah, this is like, I absolutely like love John Mayer. Like, he's my favorite musician of all time.
Mm.
And the reason for this is because, I put on, he has this album called Continuum, and there's a song on it called Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. And I remember I was sitting there and I was listening to these songs. And what he's singing about, he's like talking about heartbreak and love, and like being in love with someone and not knowing how it went wrong, or like, trying to fix things but it's not working, and also making mistakes. And I was like, fuck, this dude's been through what I'm going through. Like he actually understands me. And just started sobbing, man. Like it
Yeah.
was like really, really coming out, like the pain. And then I'm like sitting on the ground just fucking bawling my eyes out. And then Xena like came up to me and like snuggled up to me, and I was like, oh my God, like someone I can just be vulnerable around. And I just like fucking grabbed her and I was just like crying into her for
Yeah, yeah.
ages, to the point where she's like, all right, dude, enough. Like you've been going for like 40 minutes now, And I was like, all right. And then, but I got it out, man.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, oh, I can breathe again. Like I feel like I'm okay. Like I'm actually going to be all right.
Yeah.
And the way it felt, like it was like I was back at square one, but I was on the next level, you know what I mean? And it was like all of the beliefs that I had held before that of who I was and the things that had been installed in me, I was like, I get to like design my life now and create a new psychic blueprint of what I want to be, of being like someone who's healthy and strong and doing all this cool shit. And like, you know, I was like, what are the coolest things I can do? I was like, all right, I'll play in a death metal band, I'll climb trees and play with chainsaws, ride motorbikes and do martial arts and get all heaps of house plants and tattoos and shit. And like,
Sounds pretty cool to
I was
me.
like, that sounds pretty cool. And I was like, and that's what I kind of really designed my life around, and it's gone fucking fantastic.
Fuck yeah.
You know what I mean? So
That's so cool.
yeah, I mean, and I know like we were gonna start at when we met, and we didn't like quite get to that, but I feel like
No,
you
this
know,
is going exactly the way it needs to.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, dude, like it's been a crazy journey, and yeah, like ever since that moment, man, like just focusing on productivity,
Mm.
like making sure that every second of every day I'm being productive in some manner, whether it even means productively resting, You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's I fucking
Like,
love that because I'm the one's always doing. People like, we never slow down. It's like for me, like meditating is like being productive.
yeah,
It's like
100%.
because
Yeah.
it takes conscious effort,
Yeah.
and I have to actively go. No, I'm not gonna like scroll.
Yeah.
I'm literally just gonna fucking like I'm like setting aside time to do it.
Yeah.
So that's the productivity.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, and it's pretty hectic, man. Like, I'm at a point where I think I've got like 3 10-minute windows in my day where I will like look at my phone or
Yeah.
just like look at social media or something. Like, I'll get up, walk my dogs, feed the dogs, make all my meals, do some yoga, do a quick workout in the morning, go on my phone for 10 minutes while the car warms up. Then I'm at work.
Yeah.
Then I finish work, do food shopping because these guys are on a like organic diet as well. So usually I have to get meat for them, and then I'm at the
Yeah.
gym, and they get home, and I have to take them to the dog park, and they get home, and they have to cook my meals, and then I'm like, all right, now I've got to meditate and like work on my business or do
Mm.
this or like something like that. Have a shower, and then after the shower, I'm like, just let me just disassociate for a little
Yeah. Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
But even then, it's like I'll be on my phone and be like, okay, what can I post that's uplifting on Facebook for people?
Yeah.
Or like, how can I be productive in being unproductive at the moment,
Yeah.
kind of
Oh,
thing.
same.
Um,
Yeah.
and then, you know, half an hour before I plan to go to bed, I'm like, I'm even putting on my blue light glasses. So I'm like winding my brain down. I'll journal and then do meditation before bed. And then even sleeping, I'm being productive because I'm trying like astral projecting and it never ends, man,
Yeah.
but it feels fantastic. And,
Yeah.
it's, you and I were both at the start of a pretty magnificent journey, I feel.
Yeah. 100%.
Um, and yeah, I mean, not even to mention, like, obviously we didn't really have time to get into it, but, embarking on my psychic journey and, you know,
We still got
developing.
time. I'm very
I
happy
mean,
to talk about it.
we can if you want.
Yeah,
I
man. Like,
just feel
fuck
like
it. Why not?
people are gonna get fucking bored
I
listening to
think
me talk
the
shit for so long.
people who need it will sit through it.
Yeah. Look,
And if people want to stop wherever they want to stop,
yeah,
they can. But
in,
I think it's cool.
in saying that, like personally, like I feel like I'm compelling a bit
Yeah.
at least. Like I feel like, if someone's listening to me, they don't lose attention too much. I feel like I've learnt to articulate myself all right.
Yeah. It's not like rambling. It's,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like I'm very particular with like the language that I use as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like where where would we even
Well, I think I really want to just give you credit, but also say, like, talking about being hyper productive and doing all the things.
and it's not easy, like it's not an easy thing to do.
No,
Like
but
it is so much harder than like it's kind of one of those things. It's like you can be productive and you can suffer through the mental fucking discipline, or you can suffer through having to look yourself in the mirror when you just like sit at home playing video games and watching Netflix and
yeah.
just being a fucking
That's what I was going to draw
degenerate.
the comparison to because a lot of people are like, "Don't you get overwhelmed? Like, don't you blah
Fuck
blah blah?"
yeah.
Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, look, but like, it also fills my cup up because all the things I'm doing are trying to benefit either myself or other people or
Mm.
like the overall good. Serving it, I feel like I'm serving a purpose, a greater good. So when I'm like tired, I'm like, all right, but like I'm doing this for a reason. Like
Yeah.
I'm not. And then other people are like, oh, I'm just happy going to fucking. I'm like, dude, if I was sitting, like I gave away my TV because I wanted to be more productive.
I got rid of my TV for a while as well,
Yeah,
during the lockdowns actually, because I was like, I'm not enjoying all this news.
yeah,
And I kind of went outside and I was like, the birds are singing and the trees are happy and the weather's nice, yet the whole world's talking about everyone dying. I was like,
yeah,
I'm just going to do my thing and I'm going to shut myself off from this and
yeah.
enjoy my life.
And I'm like, I would much rather be going, 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 but doing good stuff rather than be like, I just want to chill and play fucking whatever game. Like,
Yeah.
nah, bro. Like, I would much rather be stressed and busy and doing all the shit rather than
Well,
like getting home at like, oh, Joel work went home and it's like, which is fine if you want to do that. But for me, I'm like, I don't want to look back at my life and go, what did I do with all that time, all
yeah.
my
Well,
life? Like,
well, I mean, like, you know, video games are just you're just living by proxy. Like play the real game, which is life. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
And the like depending on games, depending on what movie you watch, what level of consciousness made that? Like games about
Yeah,
murder, killing,
yeah.
horror movies about killing. What state of consciousness made that? And it's all
Mm,
manifestation. That's feeding thoughts into your brain that are
mm.
not good.
And I do like because I haven't played video games in a long time. Like I bought a Switch a few years ago, and I think I beat Zelda, which was fun. But that was about it. But I do appreciate the art
Mm,
that's involved because it is a creative endeavor, and that's what I believe in. Like
mm.
if I were to say that like I followed any religion, it would be the religion of creativity. But there are better things to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like
Like
create from the light, create from
yeah.
consciousness, not from materialism and ego. And,
Mm,
like people create products to sell them rather than, or like, some people do, a lot of people do. That's like a lot of Hollywood is selling a story, or the news is
yeah.
selling fear.
Yeah.
Like, and because fear is what people like grab onto
Oh
more, and
yeah.
that's what's more compelling, rather than the positivity, or like make
Mm,
movies about uplifting things. Like
yeah.
they never do too well. Like, which is crazy, which is sad. That's the state of the world we're in. But like, try and if you can do it coming from consciousness and serving a greater purpose, something greater than yourself, I think
Mm,
like your life will just magically get better.
absolutely, man. And
Yeah.
like I think that is the thing. And like you see it everywhere where, you know, it's so hard to relate to people anymore because I've been to like family functions and
Yeah.
parties and stuff and
Yeah.
people will be like, "Did you see the latest game and the fight?" And it's like they know the stats of all these different players and all
Dude.
this kind of stuff, but they don't even know they haven't even like budgeted their income or know how much money they're earning
Bro.
or how much money they're spending on streaming services and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, if you focused on yourself, like you could be more successful than this person you're
Yeah,
obsessed
when
over.
people are like, oh, I don't have any money, like I can't do this. It's like, if you like spent an hour a week listening to podcasts about personal finance
Find it, yeah.
rather than fucking God knows whatever else you're
Mm.
doing, you'd be in a great place. Like,
Funnily enough, did
yeah.
you hear about how the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad is like billions in debt?
Uh, he would be because all his money's in property. So you have to,
Uh,
yeah.
I saw
He'd
like
be,
a meme about it, and it was funny because someone gifted me that book right before it happened,
oh,
and I was like,
I got it in 2020.
mm.
Um,
Did you get a lot from it?
Rich Dad Poor Dad was like how to make money work for you.
Yeah.
um, and like pay yourself first, which is like was really good. But the one that like set me on a path for personal development and money and so like why I'm studying finance,
Mm.
it was Barefoot Investor, because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw a
Yeah.
tangible change in like finance, made money or not made money, saved
Because
money within the first chapter.
yeah, because Barefoot Investor, he's very like do this like very practical exercises that will
Yeah,
actually work. That's
literally get an IG bank account, go high interest. I was like, no shit. And like at the time,
mm,
it was like 1.85 was the high interest. Now
mm,
it's like 4.85. So you get
yeah,
a
right.
fucking ING account and I was getting like 200 and something dollars a month interest. So
Bullshit.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So you just do the things to generate the high
Mm,
interest yield, which was like deposit $200 a month, use your bank card 5 times in a month, you get high interest rate.
yeah, right.
Now it's 4.85, so that money would have been like a lot more.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because
Um,
I yeah,
yeah.
I kind of like so I used to make a shitload of money, but it was cutting trees away from power lines.
Mm.
And doing that, you're ultimately
Risk.
just butchering trees. Like
Oh yeah.
it's get them away from power lines, doesn't matter kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I got into tree work for the love of trees, being a tripper.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was very depressing to me. And but the thing about the tree industry, which is very difficult, is that it's unregulated, and it also falls under the same category as gardening and landscaping. So a fully qualified arborist who is quite literally risking their life every day doing some of the most difficult labor is on an average of $37 an hour.
That's like the landscaping
Yeah,
water
so it's
award.
one of the lowest paid trades in the world
Mm.
for the highest risk.
Mm.
But doing the power line stuff, because you kind of come under the power lines and all that kind of stuff. There's a bit
Yeah,
more
yeah,
involved with
electricity
it.
risk. Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, I wanted to climb trees, which was the main thing I wanted to do. But through the lockdowns, it wasn't really essential work, but the power lines were. So as soon as the lockdowns finished, I was like, okay, I want to do tree climbing. So I pretty much went from earning like 100 grand a year to 50 grand a year. So it was like it was a hit on the finances, but the what I learned from it was magnificent. You know what I mean? Like that really helped me develop in terms of just like health in general.
Mm.
But then all the inflation and everything happened, so it's been like the financial battle has been real for a
Yeah.
fair bit.
Teaches you a lot though, like
Yeah.
what you actually need
Oh,
to
100%,
spend
man.
money on. Like
Yeah.
you realize how much fucking money you waste on
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
Well, and again, like I mean, I've got nice things. Like I don't complain,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it's been a good experience to know. Well, I guess it teaches you how to find joy in non material
Yeah.
things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, or how to do the things that cost you money for a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Like for me, going out socializing on the weekends was going out drinking with my mates, spending like $500
Yeah.
plus on Saturday night.
Yeah. No way.
Now I can go to common unity and hang out with
Yeah.
like-minded people for, cost of breakfast and coffee in the morning or
Yeah.
something. So like I get to have meaningful conversations, meet new
Mm.
people, fucking heaps of hugs, good chats,
Yeah.
rather than like a piss D&M with my mates at night.
And a
I get
hangover.
to do it I get to do it in the morning and then
Mm.
still go about my day for no money. Like
Yeah.
so it kind of redirects you in that path as well. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, let's go into post ESO
Mm.
sickness and where that drove you.
All right. I gotta think about how to go about this because
Yeah, yeah.
like there were some very interesting things that kind of happened at ESO that are kind of difficult to describe.
Okay.
Um,
So you went into ESO Crook?
yeah, so I went into ESO Crook. So basically, again, hyper fixating on productivity kind of got me there.
Mm.
So I just got Luna as a puppy. So for anyone who's got a dog, you probably understand the headache, especially one that grows very quickly and destroys all of your belongings. So, and this house gets really hot in summer, and having long hair and spending all day in chainsaw pants and helmets and being around chainsaws and stuff, like it's very difficult to regulate your temperature throughout the day. So I wasn't sleeping very well, raising a dog, still trying to go to the gym every day, still doing tree work every day, trying to do my meals, just trying to set an example for myself, really.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, leading up to ESO, it was a very last minute decision to go. I wasn't going to, and I was like, no, I need to go. Like, I need to go. So I managed to get a ticket like last minute. And, but yeah, I remember the day leading up to it, I was at work and I remember I had a toothache and a fever at the same time. And, you know, coming from our system of belief, it's like, okay, well, you manifest sickness for a certain reason. And in my head, I was like, okay, it's because I'm just stressed trying to get up to ESO. And when we get to ESO, I'll be fine. So ended up getting to ESO and I was feeling a bit better. And I was like, all right, cool. Like feeling good. Like this is going to be enjoyable. Um, and then I was like, because I met Quentin I have this other friend called Quentin, which is a legend as well, but met him at, no, sorry, I met him at SO as well. But with the
That
whole,
day, of that.
yeah, that's when I met him as
Oh,
well.
true.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you already knew each other. Okay, there you go.
No, so,
Yeah.
but, so I went to a doof prior, which was Wild Horses
Yeah.
the previous year with like the Sarah and Dylan crew and everything.
Mm.
But they're very, we want to take it easy and not party very hard. And I was like, no, I want to, like, I spent all year preparing to party, like, you know what I mean? And so at Wild Horses, I was very much just on my own for a lot of it
Mm.
because
Get on your level.
no one wanted to be in front of the speaker and all that. They just wanted to kind of relax. So at ESO, I was like, man, I'm just like, screw everyone. I'm just going to like party and enjoy myself. And, yeah, so yeah, I was crook, and then just started like, yeah, partying real hard. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna party through the day, and then like, sorry, party through the night, and then sleep through the day as I normally do. But at this particular esoteric festival, it was like between 41 and 43 degrees every
It's
day,
bloody hot.
and so yeah, like partied for the first night, and then the day came, and I was like, oh yeah, like I can't sleep because of how hot it is, so I'll just chill. And then the next night came, and I was like, yeah, party again. And then the morning came, and I was like, man, it's way too hot. And then from that, just already being crook, and then partying and not sleeping for like 2.5 days straight, my body just went, that's your limit.
Yeah.
And very, very much learnt just how far my body would, I was able to push my body. And yeah, it became super, super sick. Like, as I said, I wasn't able to hydrate myself because I couldn't consume anything. Like my body had just shut down. So I couldn't get any sodium in my body, which meant I wasn't hydrating, which meant I wasn't sweating when it was 45 degrees. And I was just suffering, like, and had to wait another, 4 days till we could leave. And then, actually, I actually shit myself as well at one point, right? So, because like, obviously my immune system was down, and like I didn't get gastro, but because there was like
Yeah, the
apparently
gastro
gastro
break.
everywhere. But my gut was definitely like, bruh, like what have you done?
Detox. Yeah.
And so I was having to do like frequent trips to the toilets, which like smelt so fucking disgusting. But I remember it's like the middle of the night, and I woke up and I was like, dude, I'm gonna shit myself. And I was like, I got to get to like the bathroom now. And it was like, I was like, holy fuck, like this is like I had to walk so carefully because it was like about to like just liquid come out my ass, right? And as I'm walking, I'm nearly at the toilets, and I fucking walk into half a star pickets out of the fucking ground,
Oh, no shit.
and like split my whole fucking leg
Yeah,
open.
no shit.
Split my whole leg open. It was blood went everywhere. I fully shit myself in the process of it. And I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, I reckon. Like,
Worse than the trip.
like, it was so bad. And I like got to the toilet and just like fucking threw my underwear in there. I was like, fuck this. And then like got back, and I was like, man, like this is real bad. Like, so I'm not having a good time.
It's a shit time.
And then yeah, got back home. Couldn't get off the couch for about 2 weeks. And that was the most sick I've ever been in my life, I reckon. And yeah, and then so after that, so I like every now and then, like once a year, I'll usually get like a decent tarot reading or something. And yeah, just after this burnout, I was very confused because I was like, man, I've been like working so hard and trying to do all these things, and now I'm just fucked, and I can't think properly, and again, like like my intuition was gone. I didn't know where I was meant to be going with my life, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna get a tarot reading just to clarify some things. And so I just posted on Facebook in like the local group, just saying, just after a tarot reading, yada yada yada. And this woman named Michelle reached out and contacted me. She's like, hey, I do readings. She goes, I was like, oh cool, where are you based? She goes, oh, Frankston. I was like, oh cool, like you're just local. And then she goes, oh, do you mind if we have a chat on the phone? And I was like, what does she mean, like doing the reading on the phone?
Yeah.
But then, yeah, just like spoke to her on the phone, and she's like, yeah, like what's your history and this kind of stuff? And I was like, look, like I've been studying spirituality and spiritual development for the last 10 years, and I'm on this path and doing all this kinds of stuff, and I've just fully burnt myself out, and I just need someone to help me make sense of what's going on. So she's like, yeah, sure. And yeah, went and got a reading with her, and it was really good. Like, she charges, I think, like $300 for an hour or something.
God damn.
But I was like, I feel confident with her. Like the fact that she just like spoke to me on the phone for 20 minutes, just without me even booking a thing.
Yeah.
It
For
gave me
for
confidence.
context for people watching or listening, you're generally paying for a reading like anywhere between what, 50 and $100,
Yeah,
just
depending on
where you go and
yeah,
who you go to.
on how
Yeah.
good they are, kind of thing.
Yeah. Like if you just go to Mind Body Spirit Festival, you're probably, yeah, in that
Mm.
ballpark.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, ended up going to her, and very, very quickly into the session, she was just like, "Don't worry about the 1 hour thing. Like we'll go as long as you need to." And I was
Mm.
like, "Oh, cool. Like I don't know, like it doesn't feel like she's trying to take advantage or
Yeah.
anything like that. I can kind
Yeah.
of
It's like, oh, we've got five. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah." And yeah, so something so like getting back to the Seth material, as I said, it's the most comprehensive spiritual psychic information there is.
Yeah.
And due to that, like coming across it when I was like 20 years old, um, you know, because I'm a bit of a prick in a lot of ways in that I kind of I don't dress like I'm spiritual in a lot of ways. I'll usually like, look like, just listen to death metal and I'm just like this like angry person and stuff, but I kind of
Mm.
like enjoy
Yeah, I
giving the
kind of get
facade,
it.
you know
Not
what I
not
mean?
the not the
Yeah.
death metal thing, but I definitely wouldn't take it for a spiritual person.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like just giving the facade that I'm a troubled young man who listens to angry music and has all
Mm.
these issues. And there's been a lot of times where I have entered spiritual communities and, you've met someone who is a spiritual guru, know-it-all kind of thing, and they kind of see me and they're like, oh, I'll help this young man. And before they know it, I'm kind of like, well, no, like, this is how it actually is. And essentially just completely just run rings around them in terms of spiritual
Mm.
philosophy and all those kinds of things, because it's the one thing that I genuinely am obsessed with.
Yeah.
And I've been like not invited back to certain communities and stuff like that because, I've kind of gone head to head with someone who is spreading information because, like, I'm all about spirituality, but if someone is giving information that is limiting someone's beliefs on what they can become, I don't
Mm.
stand for it. I'm not happy
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that. So, like telling someone that they can only develop to this level or this or that, I'm like, no, no, no. Like,
Yeah.
you can do anything that you want.
Yeah.
And when I say that, like, they don't like that kind of thing. And so,
Because they don't want it to be greater than them.
yeah,
Mm.
or it's funny because there's what's a word for it? It's very there's a bit of hypocrisy in a lot of spiritual people where they become spiritual and it's like, but they develop this spiritual ego. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh, dude.
And
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so you come across a lot of these people. And so with Michelle, when I was doing this reading, I was like, look, one of the things that I really struggle with is that due to my age and the knowledge that I hold, it's created a lot of difficulty for me. And she goes, I completely, like, I feel you. She goes, when I was 11 years old, I was like so tapped into my psychic abilities that my parents thought there was something wrong with me because I couldn't tell the difference between reality and all
Mm.
this other stuff. And she's like, she went into spirit work very young, and a lot of other clairvoyants did not like her because of her
Yeah.
age
What
and all
would
this
you
kind
know?
of
Yeah.
stuff. So, she's in her mid 40s, but she genuinely, spoke to me as an equal. And that made me like very confident in her and in, expressing things with her and everything. And so, yeah, we did this long reading. And at the end of it, I was like, oh man, I feel like a lot better after that. And she goes, look, we got through a lot. Um, just take some time to just let it sit and marinate and then, come back when you're ready to do some more. And I was like, yeah, perfect. So it wasn't for a few months until I went back to her. But when I was back on my shit and I was like, all right, like I'm back, I'm ready to do another reading to kind of further where I kind of want to go in my life. Um, a lot of things happened very quickly in succession. That's kind of difficult for me to remember the exact
Yeah. Yeah.
lineal way that it went, but had a very good reading where we just kind of like, can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe there was an event first. So I think, yeah, sorry, I think there was an event that came up first. She asked me if I wanted to come. So she's one of the most like powerful mediums I've ever seen in my life. So the difference is like, so mediums are, they can channel the dead, right? So she was hosting this mediumship event where basically she's at a venue and she would channel the dead for a crowd of 30 people, and for each person she would connect with them and be like, okay, who do you want to talk to? And she'd communicate it. So I went to this event, and it was one of the most miraculous things I've ever seen. Like for 5 hours straight, she was like just going, and I was like, oh my God, like this is insane. But during this event, while she was channeling, I started receiving information of what she was receiving while channeling, and I was like, what the hell? Like, how am I picking up on this? And I was like, oh, maybe it's just the room, because there were like 8 different mediums there as well.
Lots of energy in there.
But I was like, man, I'm picking up on a lot of stuff here. Like, this is really interesting. And afterwards I was talking to her about it. I was like, look, these are the things I was experiencing, and this and that, the other. And she's like, yeah, that's how this works. Like, you have psychic abilities. And I was like, shit, I didn't realize this. Like, this is really cool. And I was like, can we have a reading sometime to like kind of explore this? And she was like, yeah, she was like going away like overseas or something for a few weeks. So she's like, oh yeah, but it'll have to wait. So in that time, I actually came across another medium named Sean Collins, and he's just on Instagram and everything, but he's very, very established at what he does. But he actually has a couple of mediumship courses that he sells. And I was like, oh man, like, I don't have the most finances, but I feel like this is what I need to do, because going into what I want to do, like with my, spiritual development coaching and all of this kind of stuff, it's very difficult to find how to go about it, because I was like, okay, how do I sell myself? Like, what, I'm just a spiritual development coach kind of thing, like personal development, like, maybe I should get into psychology or something so I can do that side of things. But I'm also quite against psychology in a lot of ways, because it's the practice.
Indoctrination.
It's the practice of labeling and medicating, which I'm completely against. And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, what if I can develop myself into becoming like a psychic medium? Like, that would be the ultimate way to finally be able to sell myself in this kind of way. And so I bought a couple of his courses, which cost me like a few $100. And
That's pretty good.
yeah, it was like short course. They were pretty good. And the first one, it was how to awaken your psychic senses and mediumship stuff. I'm doing this course, and I'm up to like the 7th module of the 10. And I'm like, I already do all of this. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. Like, I learnt this through the Seth material and everything. And I was like, man, I actually am a psychic. I just wasn't aware of all these things, and I've just had to learn how to channel it.
Yeah, you didn't have a name for it or a curriculum for it, but it's kind of stuff that's already...
I just thought that I was just developing, you know what I mean? And, well, not even that. I just thought that I was becoming more self-aware. That's all I thought. But through that, I began to realize that, like, through that self-development and that self-awareness, that's how you begin to...
Yeah, well, the world's a mirror, right? So the more in touch with yourself, the more in touch you're going to be with other people.
And then I was doing this other course, and I was like, they're doing exercises like, here's a photo of a man who has passed away, try and communicate with him. And there was like a photo of this dude. And I'm like, looking at my computer screen, like, okay, I guess I'll try to communicate with this man. And then I'm like closing my eyes, and then I'm like, oh, this is like, I was like, it wasn't working. And then next thing I know, I'm imagining myself on a boat. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, get out of it. And I was like, all right, I'll try again. And then I'm on a ship in like a really rough sea, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe I don't know, maybe he was a sailor or something, like, and then they're like, oh, how did he pass away? And I was like, oh, it feels like, I don't know, maybe cancer or something. And like looking at this dude, and I could start to kind of picture who he was, like this old friendly guy who, tucked his polo shirt into his jeans and all this kind of stuff. And then they go, okay, we're going to talk about it. And they go, if you experience anything to do with boats, you were correct. Like he was a sailor and sailed around the world and created boats and all this. And he passed away from bowel cancer and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, shit, like I picked up
Pretty
on
good,
all
eh?
of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is like a pre-recorded video from like a year ago.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've just looked at an image of a dude and I've managed to pick up on this stuff. Like this is actually legit. And yeah, Michelle finally got back and I had a reading with her and started talking to her. And I was like, look, um, told her about all of my experiences and everything. And she goes, actually, yeah, like, funnily enough, I've actually had visions of you doing this and us working together. And this is like a woman who's been doing this for 25 years, who's like at the top of her thing. And she's like, yeah, like, I want to start working with you. And I was like, what? Like, I don't even know what I'm doing yet.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, and just started kind of having conversations with her about business ideas and how I can kind of develop this and start building this brand. And so she has a business called the Sacred Heart Foundation, which is where she does her readings and her healings from.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Because
Yeah.
she does like everything. Like she does like psychic readings, she does tarot, she does healings, she does like conscious coupling, which is like relationship things. Like
Yeah. Is she versed on the Seth books as well?
she knows of them.
Yeah, okay.
She hasn't read them though,
I
but
feel like, sorry to jump in.
Okay.
I feel like a friend who I was with the other week, she was telling me about a chick who charged like a lot for tarot, and I was like, local. And I think she's the one I was telling about. I was like, I've heard of him before.
yeah,
So I'm
right.
like, yeah, I feel like there's something there. I feel like we're talking about the same person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
But yeah.
yeah, super fascinating stuff. But
Mm.
yeah, and then so I've just been like, yeah, working more closely with her, and then she offered me a room at her facility to work from as well. So that's been something that I've been, yeah, putting plants and stuff in there, and I've started doing healings there. And so far, I've done, I think, how many? 4 healings there, which have all gone like really, really well. Um, and so yeah, but it's very interesting. Like it's frustrating because I know like what I want to do, but I'm also at the, I'm still training this psychic muscle. But it's very true that like, we're all psychic creatures manifested into like human form, and we all have that ability to tap into that psychic nature and to develop that. And it's a very exciting path to go down, and it's also it's like the ultimate privilege as well, because it's not for everyone. Like it takes you do have to earn the
Yeah.
skill. And there are people who, once I actually had the moment of like, man, this is real. Like I actually, it was almost like I graduated into it psychologically in some way. And when I did that, like, my meditation sessions are incredible now. Like I can sense people and their energies everywhere. And it was like, once I graduated, I had this like out of body experience of being like welcomed into this psychic community from like on a worldwide, like en masse scale. And I could see as well, like psychics who, younger psychics who just naturally have it. And I could fully understand it of like, they are very aware that they are highly developed individuals. And it's not just that they just have these psychic abilities, like they have incarnated as a very, very sophisticated entity
Yeah.
and very aware of their heritage,
Yeah, they would have
of
been
who they
building
are.
that through the last
Yeah.
few lives. Oh, literally, we were talking about this last night in the class thing I was doing. It was like these people that are like 4-year-old piano prodigies and shit. They're like,
Yeah.
they've been doing that for like
Yeah, yeah.
10 lifetimes, 20, 100 lifetimes. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't just like go, I'm a gun at piano. It's like
Yeah.
they've been building this same as,
It's a very
yeah.
intentional skill that they all have. But
Mm.
it's but yeah, but it's very exciting because I'm at the start of this journey now, you know what I mean? Well,
Mm.
like
Yeah, a new
I was
direction
it's
or,
just like it was
yeah, yeah.
such a long journey, and now I'm at the start of another one, and it's like,
It's a new
oh
chapter,
man,
yeah.
it's like, well, it's a new book, man. Like
Yeah,
there were so many chapters in that previous one, and now it's like
yeah, yeah.
I'm at this completely new version of myself where I do feel like I'm literally creating my reality before myself now. Like I actually understand how to manifest events and how to um you know, create probable realities to come to fruition.
Mm.
And it does take a lot of meditation and a lot of focus, but you know, when you go on this path and you really begin to understand your intuition and understand that your intuition is your soul's message toward getting you to the greatest version of yourself
Mm.
and forming that discipline to not be distracted and not to go off track. And you know, like even my weekends now, like I don't see anyone because I have so much more than I need to do. And like you're the same, like, you know, with
Yeah,
Men Over Matter and Common Unity and everything, you know, it's the work that you have to put in, but the reward is so significant compared to anything else that's ever going to happen, especially the importance of it at this point in time,
yeah,
because we are in a chaos realm.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I got a couple questions.
Mm.
So one is what you touched on before, spiritual ego. It's you can identify it in other people, and like it's something that I'm cautious of as well. In the literally the last episode, I just released yesterday with Men Over Matter guys, we were talking about it and how to keep our own spiritual ego in
Yeah.
check. How do you
Oh,
combat that?
funnily enough, I got a download for this as well. Download is like when I just receive information.
Yeah, yeah. So for those that
So
don't know, yeah,
it wasn't necessarily a topic. It was like I didn't think to write them down, but the three particular words. It was what is it? Humility, integrity, and
Hmm.
discipline.
Integrity is number
Those are the
one for
three.
me.
Those are the
Yeah,
three words because humility with yourself,
yeah,
as in being able to look at yourself and accept that you've done something wrong and to, you know, have that vulnerability with yourself to be like, okay, you know, that's ultimately stripping down the ego. Like the ego, having an ego, or I hate that the ego is like, it's like it has two meanings, you know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
obnoxiousness, you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's having humility is the opposite of obnoxiousness. It's being comfortable enough to be wrong and not be scared of the consequences of it.
yeah. Mm.
And then it's also having the discipline to learn from your mistakes and to actually apply the things that you learn from the lessons. And then the integrity, which is, in my opinion, the most valuable trait that anyone can have. You know, the simplified version of what integrity is to do the right thing when no one's looking. To do the right thing when there is either no gain or even loss
Awareness,
or
yeah,
even having loss for
yeah,
doing that, as long as it's the right thing that you know is the right thing.
yeah,
Because you may think that you can get away with it, but we're all spiritual creatures and we're all telepathically connected. And you can tell, man. Like you can feel someone's aura if they're a shifty cunt.
yeah, dude.
You know?
That and you know in yourself, like we're talking about with the jab or with other things, like if you do the things out of alignment, out of integrity, you're
Yeah.
gonna know anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, like Ram Dass talks about it, his guru. Um, Ram Dass went into town in India. He was living in like the monastery, the ashram, whatever. And he went to get dinner at like a restaurant or whatever. And he had like a dessert, like ate two cookies.
Yeah.
And he gets back to his guru and he's like, "How are the cookies?" And I was like, "You got to do when you're like living your life intentionally. Someone's watching. It's
Yeah.
God or a spirit or
Yeah,
whatever."
yeah,
So
yeah.
like for me now, I don't even litter because I'm like,
Yeah.
someone like I'm gonna get karma for that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
don't fuck up. Like today, I was at uni and
I've got a point on karma as well. Continue.
someone left rubbish. Went to sit down and there was shit there, and I'm like, if I get up and leave, I'm just as bad as a person who fucking
Yeah,
placed it
yeah.
there. So I picked it up and throw it out. that type of shit. Like
Yeah.
you got to live your life
And you
in a
can,
way that someone is watching, because you feel the glory if you do a
yeah,
good hold a door for someone.
yeah,
You
yeah.
got to hold a door for someone when no one's there.
And bro, like, karma is a real fucking thing, man. Like,
Mm.
so with tree work, like this sounds really funny, but I build my karma up through like saving snails and shit. Because if there's like in the wet season, if there's like a branch that's been on the ground or something, like there's usually heaps of snails on these branches, and I'm like feeding them into the chipper, and I'm like, wait, fuck, no, there's snails there, got to save all these dudes. And it's like,
Yeah,
fuck the snails. I'm like, nah, dude, like God's creatures, man, like
yeah, yeah,
we're all connected. The amount of times that I have like fucked up doing something and just by chance somehow nothing, like I remember I was up this tree once and there was all this noise going on and everyone was distracted. I needed someone to rig this head out, but no one was around. I was like, all right, fuck, I'm just gonna have to bowl here. And as I went to do it, the wind went the wrong fucking way and like everything went wrong. And I was like, fuck, this is gonna like go over someone's property, destroy their car, something like
oh yeah,
that. This head went flying, caught with the wind, went like over this person's fence and landed like perfectly between everything. And I was
mm.
like, thank you, snails. Like, I
Yeah,
was like, thank God that I like, you know, have the integrity and, to kind of like do this stuff because it will save you like
yeah,
in
man.
ways that like you can't predict.
Yeah,
But the thing is as well with like karma is I had this big realization a while back because again, like I've been betrayed by a lot of people and I just had this big realization one day where it was like, people who do bad things, say they steal or they treat people poorly or any of this kind of
mm.
stuff, and it's like, oh, well, karma's going to get you or something like that. But I had this realization where I was like, it's not that karma's going to get them, it's that the karma is the fact that they are someone willing to do that. And that's exactly it. Like, the fact that you're willing to steal from someone or fuck someone over, like the fact that you exist as that person is the
Yeah,
karma. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. Well, it's like the karma. There's karma on the person who had the stuff stolen from them too, because
Mm.
they've done something to deserve
Yeah.
stuff being stolen. There's the karma who's led someone to, might have been previous lives to
Mm.
lead them to have to live the life that they're living, all the events that led them up to. Because no one's born a shit person. There's events in your life that condition you to
Yeah.
put you in a position where you feel like you need to steal something from someone, to feel like they've done something to you to steal from them, or like past lives you may have known that person and you've stolen something, they're just
Well,
repaying it.
funnily enough, I talk like you brought up another really good point because in a lot of my like healing sessions that I do,
Mm.
because I've done a lot of work with people who have gone through a lot of like sexual abuse and physical abuse and everything, and one of the points that I always bring up, which I feel is so important, is that I say like no one is born wanting to be a shit person.
Mm.
It's just the trauma that they go through is what turns them into these, people who create trauma for other people. Because at the end of the day, you will project what your inner world is like. And if your inner world is a world of pain, then you're going to project that
Yeah,
pain onto others.
hurt people.
And I'm talking from experience, man. Like I used to be a fucking terrible person. I used to do heinous things while no one was looking. But I had completely justified them in my mind in the most insane way that only someone who's in an environment of constant pain can rationalize because they're blinded by the frustration and the pain that they're going through from the people around them and the lack of understanding of everything that's going on.
Mm.
But yeah, like your reality will reflect what your inner reality is, and that's how we got on to the topic of your physical health and sickness and everything, because all sickness is a reflection or a manifestation of mental trauma or any of these kinds of things. Like, how often do you get a headache when you're around someone who has bad energy?
Yeah.
That's your brain. Well, at first you're going to get the stress. You're going to feel it. You're going to feel like the intuitive feeling of like, oh, I don't want to be around this person.
Yeah.
But the longer you ignore those messages that your soul is sending to you, or your intuition is sending to you, the more
Yeah, they'll get louder.
the more manifestant it will manifest into physical
Yeah.
ailments because, and that's when you get sick, and that's when, even cancer begins to arise
Mm.
because it is going, it is taking your focus to your body. It's trying to take you out of a situation and put you into a world where you have to shut down and you have to be with yourself and you have to be with your thoughts. And that's where your thoughts will actually guide you back to a place of healing to be like, okay, well, all of these physical ailments have happened because of this trauma that's happened to you that you've been ignoring for your entire life.
Yeah, and that's why the trauma manifests in that part of the
Yeah.
body too. Like,
And that's the thing as
yeah,
well, because, um, you may have some kind of cancer due to this and you get it cut out, but that doesn't fix the issue. It just arises again in a different form after
mm.
that. Because at the end of the day, the actual way that all of this works is that you have your higher self, and going into the topic of like time being an illusion, right? The reason time is an illusion is because it's simply just a construct of our reality. Space and time. Those are the two things that we need to have to experience physical reality. But outside of physical reality, in the multidimensional reality, in the dream state, and all these kinds of things, there is no time because it's
Mm.
it's something that we've created for this. And so our higher selves actually
He's
view
outside of
us
time.
in a space of like the endless present, the spontaneous now. So they actually view us, or our individual incarnations, as a moving picture of sorts, which has an endless row of possibilities to explore. And again, going back to 2 hours ago when we talked about deja vu, in the dream state, your higher self will explore these certain realities. And, in the pursuit of the expansion of consciousness, we want to explore the full capacity of being human.
Yeah, it's why they say it's like a simulation. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
follow
absolutely.
this route. I'm gonna play it this
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
And so our higher selves will go, okay, well, what's the most profound thing or the most amazing thing that Josh or Brennan could experience in this reality? Fortunately for both of us, has been spiritual
Yeah.
development, which is
Yeah.
pretty great. And so your higher self will explore all these things, and in the dream state, it'll explore all these realities, and it'll go, you know what? That's where I want him to get to, because that's going to bring the most opportunity, the most creativity, and the most lessons to learn from to further the expansion of creativity and consciousness. And so back in the waking state, your higher self will communicate with you through your intuition and through these telepathic messages to guide you toward these things. And so when you have deja vu, it's literally a manifestation, or the fruition of a manifested event from the dream state. Now, the reason we develop sicknesses and traumas and everything is because traumas are very much so emotional and spiritual blockages for the personality. And having those blockages of energy are preventing you from receiving higher information and higher knowledge, but they're also created to help you learn the lessons that allow you to receive that higher knowledge. And so, in the fashion of trying to become the most developed person that you can become, the trauma serves as the lesson for your life, really. And so, if you're not paying attention to it, your soul's gonna find new ways to try and get you to pay attention to it. So it is a bit of a bitch, because if you aren't growing or trying to develop, that's where you're gonna get sick. Like, if you are not continuously growing and developing, if you're not playing the game,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're gonna end up medicated and sick, or then you're just gonna start going for cheap dopamine to distract yourself from the depression that you
Yeah.
feel, because the depression is very much,
Yeah. Well, it's like you're either playing the game or you're the victim of it.
yeah.
And then yeah.
But it's fucking fun, man.
Yeah. It
Like,
is.
it's fucking difficult at times, but it's always fun.
Yeah. And like, to go with the game analogy, it's like when you do face hardships, which like, because you know it's a lesson, it's so hard to like be like, fuck, what are you teaching me? Like, why do I have to do
Yeah.
this shit? But it's like the another level, another devil.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that's like, at least now having that comprehension, you're like, all right, like I know there'll be a lesson, and like I
Yeah.
know I'll get through it. But fuck, at the time, it feels like you're being punished or cursed because it's like,
Yeah.
is it karma? Is it a lesson? Obviously, it's both, but like, what is it? What's it for? And it might take you 6 months, a year, 10 years to
Mm.
be like, fuck, that's why I had to go through that shit. But like, you're always grateful when you do figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's developing the skill of figuring it out, which is like
Mm.
what will set you apart from someone else.
Yeah.
And what the skill is very much so confronting yourself and your anxieties. If
Mm.
you feel anxiety about something, it means that it's something that you need to be confronted with, but having the courage to go, okay, why am I anxious about this certain thing? And it could be something, it could be about being sexually abused or any of these kinds of things, but you can always guarantee that if you actually genuinely follow that anxiety and let it speak to you and let it unfold and follow it, no matter how long that takes, and like going through it in meditation or, you know, sometimes utilizing plant medicines to help kind of
Give you some awareness around
be
it.
forced into it or
Mm.
encouraged into it, you will come to a place of healing and understanding that will help you level up to becoming that next version of
Mm.
yourself. And as you become that next version of yourself, your intuitional patterns will change. The direction of your life will change. Like personally for me, like I had many different directions, like different jobs and certain things. And eventually, like, I'm kind of at the point where I'm entering the elite stage of, okay, now you've got all the lesson. Now it's time to become an entrepreneur and to do something of like significant value for the people around you and
Mm.
everything as well. So it's like the game never ends, man. And like the levels are interesting and the
Yeah.
challenges are always hard. And, this is why it's important to go to the gym and stuff like that, because the gym teaches you consistency and effort equals result.
Mm.
And when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's like consistency and effort toward bettering yourself and going with these challenges and trusting the process
Yeah.
will get you to a better
Yeah,
place.
and the work's never done. Like you set a goal to bench press a certain amount, you get there and you're like, oh, it's not it. Like I can keep going and there's more. Like I can
Yeah.
keep growing and learning. Like
And that is the thing
yeah.
because, it's like you might be able to, bench 60 kilos. That's all I can fucking bench. But, you might be like, I want to bench 100. But by the time you can bench the 100, the discipline you have on your diet and your sleep and how locked in you are, the 100's not going to be enough for you anymore.
Mm.
That might have been like, and even in terms of like happiness and joy, like you might be sitting there and be like, okay, I'll be happy when, I have a job that I enjoy and the girl of my dreams and a family and all this kind of stuff. But by the time that you've developed into the man or the woman to reach the stage where you have attracted those things, your goals are going to be fucking way up here now.
Yeah, the other thing is you're not present because you're so focused on the outcome. You didn't realize like to get the good job, to have the family, to get the girl, all the things is like you had to be a better person, work towards a job, and like
Yeah.
do all these awesome things because you're so fixated on the end, you forgot to enjoy all the good
It
stuff.
does some mad like dream noises, man.
Yeah, I think that's important is to focus on the presence of getting to the goal because like it's
Yeah, enjoy the
cliche as fuck.
process
It's
as
like
well,
do the
man.
journey's the best
Yeah,
part
it's a fucking
because like
stress.
you get there and you're like, oh, I'm here. Now I'll work to the next goal. It's like that's why you got to enjoy the whole process there because
Yeah.
you get there and you're like, oh, and now there's all of this.
Yeah.
Because fuck, that's been a big one for me. Like especially like gym goals. Like fuck yeah, I hit the 100. I'm like, oh, do I go for 120 next? Like
Yeah,
where
yeah.
where does it go? And
Well, I
it
guess
will never end.
yeah, I guess that's the thing. Like, and even if like you want to relate it back to the gaming world, it's like you beat the game, and then like how good is it when the DLC comes out? You know what I
I don't
mean?
know what that is.
Oh, like like an expansion for the game.
Oh,
You know what I
okay.
mean? Like downloadable content.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like it's like you finish the game and you're like, oh fuck yeah, and then they release more of the game,
Mm,
but you have to complete it before
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
But
yeah. It never ends.
enough of that nerd shit.
Yeah, I can't. The highest model gaming console I had was a PlayStation 2.
Fuck yeah, the best console, man.
Yeah. Um,
PlayStation peaked with the PS2.
yeah. Moving into the future, how does someone tatted up with long hair, dressing like a death metal front man, move into a spiritual entrepreneurship. And I guess like that's that part we can work out. But how convincing people based on perception? Because like I definitely have a perception of me, or that I've created in my head of what I assume people look at when they first meet you. What is that transition? It doesn't even need to be a transition because you could just keep like all the things you're doing.
I think it's at the same time, like I don't always dress like dark. I think it also kind of depends. Like I'll dress kind of for the occasion. I know that with with clients that I have, depending on whether that, because like for me personally, like a while back I came to the realization I'm actually like a very feminine person. But that's why I do such masculine things. It's to kind of like level out the the equilibrium of it. But depending on what the person actually needs, I'll kind of dress differently.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they need a more like gentle kind of feminine energy, I'll like do a healing with lighter clothes and have my hair down and stuff. And like,
Yeah.
but if they
Okay.
need a more masculine, I'll usually like tie my hair up and,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
know, wear like, say like tighter clothing to show more of like a masculine look and everything, to be a bit more assertive and dominant in terms of what they need
Their
installed in them
comfort
and
or
stuff.
whatever. Yeah.
But the thing is, man, is that like the whole point is to just be you.
Cool. That's
And
yeah.
and I have struggled with that in the past. That was something that I was always wondering, because I was like, shit, I do have a bit of a like weird sense of humor, and a lot of my beliefs are not don't
Mainstream.
conform to the normal thing. And it's like, how do I do this? But at the end of the day, like the more you follow your intuition will help you develop into the person you need to become. And at the end of the day, like regardless of what I listen to or what I do, you know, there's a really good saying. It's like, it's not what you wear, it's how you wear it. And at the end of the day, you know, I might wear like a Whitechapel hoodie, which is a deathcore band, or do whatever, but you can, you know, the right people who have done the work will be receptive to you. And at the end of the day, like you got to start with yourself, and if you do the work, regardless of all things, people will talk about you word of mouth if you're doing the right thing by them and being selfless and being caring and loving. And
Yeah.
I think it's almost more important to try and stand out,
Yeah.
to break the mold, because people are very judgmental and very scared to stand out and all these kinds of things. Or at least the ones who are trying to stand out are doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But but again, like you can't deny or
Going for a spew.
all right.
Um.
But it should be all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like at the end of the day, like if you eat well and you go to the gym and you take care of yourself and you meditate, like you can't fucking deny that aura of someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think for me, it's like that's what I kind of was asking because like we get worried about perception, but I think the best part is like it doesn't actually mean anything because that's just a reflection on them and what they're afraid of.
Mm.
And authenticity is the best thing that you can bring to the table because you will attract
Actually,
the
yeah.
right people.
In saying that as well, yeah, that's very much it. I think. So who was it? Joe Dispenza. Do you know Joe Dispenza? He's
Yeah,
a
I was going to ask you because I'm like, you keep just talking about stuff that's his
yeah. Well, it's
your
really
space and
yeah, it's really funny because
changing your thoughts. Yeah.
I never followed him.
Mm.
Zena, what are you doing? I never followed him, and then but my mum really likes his stuff, and I was like, oh, I'll start following him, and then like all the stuff he's writing, I'm like, wait, I say this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you know, he's huge on abundance,
Mm.
and he put it. I stole some of his stuff because he's just very good, but he says
Yeah,
that
he talks about it. He's like, take what's good, like, it
well,
works.
it's more he says that, you know, abundance is the opposite of force.
Yeah.
And so, when you're trying to force an outcome out of things, you're trying to like make something happen that's not meant to happen. But it's like
It's too fast.
when you live in abundance, it's an attraction thing.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the main lessons that I kind of learnt when, starting my own business and doing healings and everything, is that at first, before kind of tapping into my psychic nature, I was like, all right, how do I sell myself? How do I convince people that I know what I'm talking about? And all these kinds of things. Whereas when because it was a frustrating journey, because I had all this like very, very deep information where, like I don't know if you were there, like, actually, I'm not going to name specifics, but I've been to places where I've gone to workshops and people have like talked about spirituality and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like listening to them and they're just like fumbling through this thing, and like just what they're saying is just the most like watered down basic stuff that's just like, and I'm just looking at this person like, this is just not even that valuable. And but like, the people there are like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
this is incredible.
But you gotta understand that, like, you gotta meet people one where they're at, and also like the stuff that we're talking about. Some people are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to
Yeah,
cater to your audience.
but not so much that. But I'm just kind of talking on like my personal journey, where personally I was like, okay, why does this person who has like significantly less information that I have more courage than me to go and do this?
Mm.
And it was a very confusing thing, but intuitionally, like rationally, I was like, I should be doing this. I should be doing this. But intuitionally, I was being told it's not time yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's simply what it was. I was like, it's not time yet. I just need to trust this. And finally, when I came into my psychic development, I hit this point where I was like, I get it now.
Yeah.
And it was that I hit a point of like, because of the sophistication of what I was trying to teach, that takes time to really, really have confidence in being able to express, because I have to be very specific with the wording that I use, because I'm trying to articulate non-physical information and symbolism and dream state symbolism and all these kinds of things. So it's very specific, like, because the human language is very limited. So I had to really develop my ability to communicate that. But once I hit the point where I was like, okay, I actually I'm receiving this information and I'm able to channel it, I'm able to communicate it properly. Once that point hit, the fear of failing just vanished. And I don't actually feel like I need to even market myself or anything at this point, because I know that the work that I'm doing is like undisputable.
Yeah.
Like the things that I talk about and the things that I share with people and the things I say in my healings, you can't deny what I'm talking about and the enthusiasm that I have behind it, because all of it is just fully uplifting information. It's like anything that you've been through, I can easily dismantle what has happened and give you hope. And that's all I care about doing. And like the way that I kind of like to think about what I do is that everything that I try and do is I just try and help people fall back in love with themselves, because it's very difficult to find love in this world. And once they find that love in themselves and that hope, that's the only seed you need to put in them, because it's like that.
Yeah.
It's like I did a healing on Quinton's girlfriend. He has a new girlfriend, but she had been through a very traumatic past, and we got into the healing, and again, like, went really deep into the whole, if someone treats you poorly, it's a projection of their own inner world, and that once you separate, it's almost like if you've had an abuser, the healthiest, it's not about forgiving them or anything like that. It's actually about understanding that they are a victim who's actually projecting their own pain into the world around them. And if it wasn't you that they were projecting it toward, it's someone else, or another being, an animal, or their workmates or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you kind of like get them to understand that. I also then go into a lot of psychic heritage to do with like the higher self and the probable realities and how to manifest. And I've also developed a a couple of like meditation
Techniques.
exercises and
Yeah.
techniques as well. You know, with a bit of breath work and meditation, and also like utilizing, you know, going back to my acid trip with the whole like focusing on the single cell and starting at the core and learning how to develop your energy and to express it outward. And yeah, had a you know, I took her through a meditation, and this is someone who has had a very, very abusive life, like her whole life. And I took her through a meditation, and there was a point where like she, I don't know how to explain it. It was about kind of like manifesting a reality that she wanted. And you could see that she went from feeling like unsure and everything, and there was a point where it just clicked for her, and she just like started crying and like just had like the biggest grin on her face and came out of it, and she was like, "Oh my God, sorry, like, you know, that was really powerful." And like, you know, I like went home later and fucking had to cry because I like had to hold it in the session, but like, you know, it was like,
You know, you've done something good.
it was overwhelming for me because, you know, I'm here because, you know, like the psychic information, it's very overwhelming to deal with, man. Like you're getting multiple channels, you're experiencing stuff, you're seeing the energies of people and the things they've been through, and not to mention like I'm fucking tired. Like I've been at work all day and doing all this kind of stuff, but this is what I need to do. And it's like, you know, you feel so overwhelmed from the weight on your shoulders, but then you're like, you know, it was a moment where I was like, man, I kind of just like saved this person's life in a lot of ways. And like not in the sense that she was going to kill herself, but in the sense that she wasn't going to achieve anything in her life with her set of beliefs that she had. But I managed to do something where she like had just a light bulb moment of, wow, actually like I am going to be all right. And it was just like, it was so overwhelming to handle. I was like, oh my God, like, but you know, it was like, all of the pain that I've been through and everything that I've suffered through, it was worth it for just that moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just the beginning. And that's the thing, like, I'm happy to do this for free for the rest of my life, you know what I mean? But I do understand that making money from this and finances from this, it's not so I can just become wealthy and rich. It's so I can create more free resources to help more people. Because at the end of the day, all I wish, you know, like with Common Unity and like with Men Over Matter, you know, you guys are just breaking even with that, you know what I mean? And it's because you want to put the facility out there. And, you know, I don't believe in trying to market to people and do this and do that. I believe in living in abundance and helping people in such a genuine way that they feel compelled to want to give back.
Yeah.
And to support you. You know what I mean?
And that's why I talk about like the authenticity is like people can genuinely feel like when you're just trying to help, and they'll be like if they find value in it, or they will pass it on. Like if it's a donation, support you in whatever way they can, give you a space to use. The world is abundant and stuff will come to you. You don't have to like grasp it, trying to get clients and fucking advertise ridiculously and market and
Like
create a fake
obviously use the tools
yeah,
to help.
I mean, like
but yeah.
when people are like, you know, when they're like trying too much to be someone they're not, to follow a certain Instagram algorithm, to they've seen someone trying to use someone else's model to get clients.
Yeah.
When you're trying like that way, it's kind of like the Joe Dispenza thing with force. It kind of pushes away because it's inauthentic to what you are. But when you're being yourself and you're just serving something greater than you, and you're just trying to show the good in the world and help people out, that's attracting the abundance in. Because it's like you're doing a good thing, they're going to give you more things to help you do a good thing.
And
whether that's money or
and as well, like, and this like applies the same for you as well. But like, the coolest thing is it so what like I think you're 2 years younger than me. Like I'm only 30 years old, and I've like cracked the code. You know what I mean? And that's only after what I consider to be 4 years of doing this.
Yeah.
And that was just like, and that, you know, those 4 years were a lot of like unlearning 26 years worth of damage.
Yeah.
And like, not just that, but like, again, I was like I was borderline anorexic.
Yeah.
There was a lot of damage that had been done. But now, I'm 30 years old and I have the knowledge of multiple lifetimes, I feel, and just this unbreakable desire just to fucking help everyone.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, fuck, like if I can achieve, and I've only just started doing this practice for maybe 3 weeks, and I've already changed the lives of 4 people doing this. And it's like, okay, well, I've got a solid. I reckon I could live for it. I reckon I could live for another 90 years if I wanted to.
I literally said to a friend today, she was like, I didn't like blah 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 something something. I'm like, well, you got 80 years to go. She was like, I'll be 106. I'm like, yeah, you're healthy.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, I like same thing. Why put a limit on age? Like, in biblical times, they're talking about fucking 300, 400.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
why are we limiting it?
Yeah.
We're knowledgeable on how
Belief
to,
systems, man.
yeah,
Belief
give
systems.
yourselves the right food. Like,
But it's one of those things as
Yeah.
well. Like it's not so much about the age. It's more about giving yourself enough purpose to reasonably be around for that long.
yeah, it's like have you read Ikigai? Or you know what Ikigai is?
No.
That's based on
No, so I've heard of it, but
yeah, the blue zones, and it's
Yeah.
basically about having a purpose.
yeah,
Like, people don't need to live to 120 if they've got nothing to live for.
yeah,
Same as like why a lot of old people die as soon as or not long after their
Mm.
partner dies. So like, well, what's
Yeah.
the point in living? But if you've got a purpose and you're trying to fucking help people forever, you'll last
Yeah.
longer. Like,
and it's like, yeah, well, if my purpose is to prove to you how long you can live, then I'm gonna fucking do it.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
But yeah, like I saw a guy in Donald, like where SO is,
Yeah.
to get treatment on my groin, and he was like, "You guys are the ones that keep me alive." He's 85, and
Yeah, right.
he'd like treat my groin with his finger, and like would like poke, and he's working with the nervous system and nerves and stuff like that. And he was like, "Yeah, like helping you guys is keeping me going."
Mm.
And he's just an old dude working on a massage table in his lounge room.
That's the
pretty
thing,
much.
man. Like when you retire, you expire.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
that's the Ikigai is like never retire, and it doesn't mean like stop working for fucking boss. It's like when you stop like working towards your goal or your purpose, whether that's tending the garden, being a dad, being
yeah.
a family,
And
like yeah,
not to make the podcast go for longer, but this all comes down to a fear of death.
yeah,
Everything comes down to a fear of death. And when you learn that, like, because the thing is, man, is that like we are more dead now than we will ever be. Like, life only expands and becomes more prolific and more amazing. And due to a lack of spiritual understanding, people see death and they're like, oh, that's the end.
yeah,
But it's not. I've said this to only a handful of people, but I cannot fucking wait to die, man. Like, I am genuinely like have arguments with myself over like dying, over wanting to kill myself because
Yeah.
I'm that excited for it, man.
Yeah, that's the thing though, right? It's like
I'm so
killing yourself is like don't do it.
yes, don't kill
Because
yourself.
you're also like defying God, because it's like
Well, you're defying your higher self.
yeah,
Like,
but it's like in your karma when your time is due for you to take your life into your own hands in that
Yeah.
sense, you're doing it like it's wrong.
yeah,
That's why like suicide people are like, oh, I'm gonna like reach your higher self. It's like, nope, you've just created literally a life of karma, and you've
Yeah.
just gone down.
yeah. Well, it is one of those things because, like, again, like after death is very much so the dream state, except you're just much more consciously focused in that area.
Mm.
But I've been to the other side many, many times, and it is so exciting.
Mm.
It's so exciting, and it's like I do come back, and I have these temptations of like,
Take me back.
this is boring, like compared to that. But I do know that my higher self, I incarnated here for a reason. I have a
Yeah.
lot to do, and it would be very, very disrespectful
Yeah.
to go and fuck that up.
Yeah, and it's like you don't know how many more lifetimes you got after this. You like go back to the dream state and like, all right, we're gonna put you in this body now. And you're like, fuck. And
Well,
then-
in saying that as well, though, man, is like going back to the time being an illusion. All of your future and past lives are happening simultaneously.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's like you go back to the selecting character.
Yeah.
That's basically what I feel
Yeah.
like. That's the most easiest way I can try and explain it to someone is like you go back to
Yeah, yeah.
that home
The
page of the
screen, the
game
loading
and you're
screen.
like, all right, now go back to this one and you just
But
redo it again.
but my whole philosophy is that to me, death is the ultimate privilege, man. That's like
Because you've lived a life.
that's man, like just thinking about just trying to comprehend the concept of death is intense. And the way I kind of look at it is like knowing what death is and it being the ultimate expansion of consciousness from physical focus into non-physical. Like I want to earn my death.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's my whole thing. It's like I want to like get to the end and be like, fuck yeah, I have earned this point of existence. And as well, like people don't realize that fear of death is what makes you age poorly. You know, if when you when you understand and you're excited for these things, like aging is a very exciting process. It's just because we're so physically oriented, the concept of being less physically capable, which doesn't have to happen until you're fucking 80 years old. But with that age comes such like wisdom and psychic abilities. Like if you're actually focusing on developing yourself, you're not going to have to fucking worry about needing your physical.
Yeah, well, it's like you might not be able to go to the gym every day, or you might not be able to fucking run and do all these things in like, or
You might not
go to the shops when you're
fucking
80.
compete in MMA or something.
Yeah, or
But
like,
still,
you might be couch bound.
you
But
won't.
fuck, you've got 24 hours a day to meditate now. You know what I mean? It's like you have some opportunities taken away from you, but that presents to you other
But in
opportunities.
saying that again, man, that's the mindset of someone who believes that age brings sickness. Like I remember I used to go to the gym and I'd always like go in the pool in the spa afterwards and there was like this Asian dude who was just doing laps constantly. Like every day I was there, he was doing laps and he was in the spa once. I just kind of started chatting to him. The dude was like 100 years old. Like no shit, like 100 years old, diving into the pool doing laps of freestyle every day because he took care of himself.
Yeah.
And if you have that mentality of like abundant health and again like focusing on the regeneration of your cells every single day and this having purpose and having a reason to be alive, like you don't even have to lose your mind by the time you pass away.
Yeah.
Like by the point where you have completed your role in life, it'll be more of a conscious decision to pass on than it will be this onset dementia and horrific like downfall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they say. It's like, when they say they left their physical being, they didn't say died or passed away. It's just like, but again, like we're in a karmic world, so you might have karma at an older age due to something, and I think it's a lesson or an opportunity. So yeah, who knows? Who knows what the future brings? But
That's it, man.
I think all we can do is focus on good and bringing light and consciousness to the world and fucking helping people and
that's because Quentin and I were going to Wild Horses. I fucking love Quentin, man. Like I didn't realize how much of a sick cunt he was until I went and hung out with him solo.
Yeah.
But like the other day, just hits me up and he's like, "Yeah, so I kind of had like a free afternoon, so I just like decided to just spend some time down at the homeless shelter and just have a chat to people and stuff." I'm like, "What?" Like that's so cool. And then we were talking about wild horses and what we wanted to do, and we both just kind of came up with this conclusion where I was like, I just want us to both be just like jacked and healthy and just be like the most positive people ever. Like imagine coming across like just dudes who just look like complete fuckwits, right? But you come in and they're just like the nicest people ever and they just accept you and like, make you feel uplifted and make you feel like, you've got really good company. And then he goes, "You know what, every night what we should do, we should set out to like just find someone who's not doing well and just help them." And I'm like, bro, that's fucking sick. Like, you know what I mean? Just like, just have like this unfuckwithable positive energy and just like spread it to everyone
Dude.
at all times.
You got to go back and listen to the last podcast. Literally, like Kieran was like, "Become unfuckwithable."
Yeah.
Like that is it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Know that who the fuck you are. Do good. Yeah. So cool. That's yeah. I think that's like not even. It shouldn't even be anyone's. I mean, it should be a goal for a doof, but like in life,
Yeah.
just
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere, like fucking spread positivity, and like the best place to start is with yourself. Get rid of your negative self-talk. Start living,
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like, be the best person you can. And then, like, for me, the thing that's helped me, I think for the most is people seeing the changes I've made and they're going, oh, fuck, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Like, I'm like, and then they start asking questions. How can they get better? It's like, be the change you want to see. And then,
Yeah.
fuck yeah. Sick.
I reckon that's a pretty fucking good ending note.
Yeah.
That was good, man.
Thanks, bro.
That was fucking sick.
Appreciate it.
Oh, good.
So